Good afternoon. We're going to change up the meeting a little bit today. We're going to swear in our new police chief, Chief David Zabalski, and his wife Sue is here today. And so what we first have to do is a presentation of the colors, and we'll then do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we have a swearing-in ceremony for the new chief. So if we'd all rise, please. I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Prior to swearing in our newest police chief, I think it's probably important that we provide some background information on our next chief. David Zabalski served as the chief in Beloit, Wisconsin from June 16, 2015 until accepting the chief of police position recently with the city of Fargo. During his tenure in Beloit, he led major organizational change within the department and its community that positively affected leadership and culture, strengthened community relations, and saw the integration of progressive technology and best practices while making Beloit a safer city. Zabalski began his career with the Milwaukee Police Department, where he served 27 years, working his way up the ranks and retiring at the rank of captain in 2011. He held a variety of patrol positions, investigative, and specialty unit commands. From 2011 to 2015, David Zabalski served as the deputy administrator for Wisconsin's Division of Law Enforcement Services. Zabalski had operational responsibility of a statewide division that included training and standards for law enforcement. Zabalski is a graduate of Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command, Police Executive Research Forum, Senior Management Institute for Police, and is an International Association of Chiefs of Police, nationally certified leadership and police organization instructor. He holds a Master's of Science in Organizational Management and Leadership from Springfield College. In 2020, he was appointed Vice Chair of the International Association of Chiefs of Police Mid-Size Agency Division and also serves on several community boards.
Did you bring the chief up to the lectern?
Yep. Chief Zabalski.
I'll have you take the lecture. What we're first going to do is give him the oath of office. I'll have you stand by the mic, Chief, if you wouldn't mind, just so the crowd can hear you. This is the law enforcement oath of honor. Raise your right hand, please. On my honor, I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
to uphold the Constitution of the United States,
the laws of the state of North Dakota,
the laws of the state of North Dakota,
and the city of Fargo,
and the city of Fargo.
I will always have the courage
I will always have the courage
to hold myself and others
to hold myself and others
accountable for our actions.
accountable for our actions.
I will keep my private life unsullied.
I will keep my private life unsullied.
I will never betray my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
integrity,
my character,
my character,
or the public trust in my position as a Fargo police officer.
or the public trust in my position as a Fargo police officer.
We'd ask you to sign your oath at the table, please. Sue, I'll have you come up. When you become a chief, it takes longer to pin on the pin. Now, Chief, we'll allow you to address the audience and your new voters and residents, City of Fargo.
Thank you, sir. First, my thanks to the Mayor, City Commission, members of the Chief Selection Committee, members of the Fargo Police Department, and our community here in Fargo for placing their faith and trust in my leadership. These are important and stressful times for our community, our officers, and our elected officials. Although my exposure has been limited to this point, I'm extremely impressed with the level of commitment and dedication I have witnessed from both our community and the department. Like many in a position like this, many of our law enforcement officers, people at this type of a leadership level, we didn't get here on our own. And I'd like to thank and recognize my wife Sue, our daughters and family, as well as my many friends and colleagues who over the years have helped mentor, guide, and develop me into the leader that I am today. Without all of them, and without their continuing support and pseudo-advisorship, I probably wouldn't be here. So I want to recognize and thank all of them for that. And many of them are watching remotely tonight as a result of our current situation, so I want to make sure that they're recognized. As far as our police department, I'd like to thank the men and women of the Fargo Police Department, both sworn and civilian, for the service that they provide every day to our Fargo community. I look forward to working with all of you as we transform the Fargo Police Department from a very good department to a great department. In short, a high-performing team of law enforcement professionals. To that end, our first task will be to collectively establish a bona fide vision, mission, and set of core values that will clearly identify who we are as a department, how we perform our law enforcement duties, and how we hold ourselves accountable to each other and the public. From there, with your input, we'll critically analyze and evaluate all areas of the department, from staff schedules to operational improvements, as we seek to create a learning organization that draws character-driven individuals to its ranks while growing trust and legitimacy with our community. I appreciate your resiliency and fortitude as our department and law enforcement nationally navigate significant environmental change and stress during very tumultuous times. And always remember that as long as you are doing the right things for the right reasons, you have my full support and advocacy. Also remember that if you fail to perform a ministerial duty or are involved in malicious conduct, that you will be held accountable. Never forget that what you do every day is significant, valued, and respected. Thanks for all your efforts, past and present, as we continue to enhance our effectiveness and efficiency in service to our community. And to our community, I want to recognize you're outstanding, and I want to thank them for the warm welcome and level of cooperation I've received thus far. And even though I've just started today, yes, I have heard from several community members over the past several weeks, and that's great. There's a lot of involved, committed individuals here. I understand the community members want to feel safe in their neighborhoods and public spaces. They want Fargo to be recognized as a beautiful and promising community it is. They want to be proud of their community. They expect professional, fair, respectful, and competent service from their officers, and in some areas they want to be involved. Under my tenure, we'll ensure that this gets accomplished. Sir Robert Peel, the first commissioner of the London Metropolitan Police Service, commonly referred to as the father of modern-day law enforcement, espoused 9 principles of ethical policing that are as relevant now as they were in 1829 when he first posted them. The 7th principle states that to maintain at all times a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. In short, public safety is a team sport, and our community must be part of the team. The trust, support, and cooperation of our community is critical to reducing crime, fear, and disorder in all of our neighborhoods. This is a continual task that we should not and will not take for granted. To that end, the Fargo Police Department will continue to proactively engage our community members in positive, non-enforcement scenarios as part of our overall community policing strategy. We commit to enhancing relationships with all of our diverse community members and business owners while increasing opportunities for involvement. Further, we commit to reducing crime, fear, and disorder through a neighborhood-based, problem-oriented, and intelligence-led approach. From my perspective, and I hope for many of yours, the future of Fargo is extremely bright and promising. I'm extremely honored to have been chosen to lead this department and serve this community. I look forward to our future successes as we create a Fargo that is not only the safest city in North Dakota and the region, but is served by the best equipped, best trained, best led, and most committed public servants and guardians. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Do you have a video, Ty? Later, okay. At this time, as tradition of the police force, the policemen in the room will congratulate the new chief. You kindly stand, and Chief, if you'd come back up here in front so they could elbow you on the way out. But we normally have a force of 170, 180 policemen, police support, and we've cut down the numbers so the public could get in at the meeting. So kindly, if you do that, you will recognize many of our police officers as they go by. And Ross Renner reluctantly gave up his role as interim chief and is happy to hand the reins over to Chief Zabalski. They will have a formal meeting in the chief headquarters later. Thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Gehrig? Here. Preston?
Here.
Pepcorn?
Here.
Strand?
Here.
Mahoney?
Here. I asked all the department heads to give me some information, and it looks like I got over enthusiastic on this. Engineering, with a combination of good weather planning, design, and partnerships with good contractors, major road reconstruction projects in Fargo are complete well before the first snow of the year. Some of the major projects completed this year include 10th Street North, 7th Avenue North, 3rd Avenue North, 11th Street North, 12th Street North, Main Avenue, 17th Street South, from 25th to 21st Avenue. Fire. This is Fire Prevention Week, and the Fargo Fire Department encourages citizens to participate in this national-wide effort, which is united under the campaign, Serve Up Fire Safely in the Kitchen. 4 members of the Fargo Fire Department who were part of the North Dakota Task Force have returned from an 18-day deployment in Oregon, where they served and stayed at a base camp and performed structure protection missions. They made it back tired and worn out. Inspections. The value of the building permit so far in 2020 is $576 million, already the second highest year ever. The only year higher was when permit values were issued for the new Sanford Hospital. Planning. Indigenous Peoples Day is October 12th, and the Native American Commission has been involved in planning a full day of free virtual programming, including an opening ceremony, presentation of this year's Gladys Ray Award, traditional art projects, storytelling, music, and more. Also, the city of Fargo is making funds available for snow removal services to help low and moderate income homeowners who are elderly or disabled. Applications are due by October 23rd and will be prioritized on a first-come, first-served basis. Solid waste. During this year's cleanup weeks, 1,257 tons of debris was collected from the boulevards and residents, hauled 55 tons to the landfill. Crews also collected 143 tons of appliances, which required 184 truckloads, 2,489 tires, 276 microwaves, and 35 propane tanks. In comparison, crews collected 1,948 tons of debris during cleanup work in 2019. Transit, this is great news. On October 1st, the transit operations moved back to the newly renovated Ground Transportation Center. Operations were temporarily moved on April 4th while renovations were underway. Renovations include relocation of the fixed route dispatch for improved visibility by dispatchers, relocation and expansion of the restrooms, replacement of lobby seating, expanding informational displays with live bus tracking, and improved access to the building. The completion of external repairs and renovations, including roof replacement, will be done in the spring. Police. On September 29th, the Fargo Police Department's community engagement team partnered with a family fair and NDSU volleyball to provide food for the residents of the arbors near McCormick Park. The team cooked food, played basketball with the kids, and had community conversations with residents of the neighborhood. All members of the Fargo Police Department enjoy spending time with the residents of the community they serve. We were going to have a video, or no? We are going to have the video, okay? I think, Dave, that looked like a Carson Wentz football throw, didn't it? That last one there? Oh, the Red River Valley COVID-19 Task Force, under the leadership of Fargo County Public Health Director Desi Fleming, unveiled a new masking campaign running in tandem with the state's Mask It Up ND efforts. A new website, forallofus.com, has been created for the campaign. Helpful, easy to understand information and tips are available. The public can order free window clings to actively participate in this region-wide campaign. We got those?
Mask Up ND for all of us. forallofus.com.
Many shows and concerts across our state are being impacted by COVID-19.
Social distancing requirements helped, but it kept us from packing the house in 2020, and we missed you.
By wearing a mask, social distancing, and washing your hands, you're doing even more to help fill North Dakota's entertainment venues in 2021.
Please do your part. Mask Up ND for all of us. Bully. forallofus.com.
COVID has changed some things, but our family hasn't put our lives on hold. We just needed to make a few adjustments. We use more hand sanitizer now, and make sure to mask up when we can't socially distance. Things are different now, but we still find ways to be safe and have fun as a family. Mask up, ND, for all of us. ForAllOfUs.com.
Very good. Is that it, Ty? We're ready to go. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda delaying item 27 for 2 weeks?
I so move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the September 21st, 2020 meeting? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 37, excluding item 27, which has been delayed for 2 weeks?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston. Aye. Pepcorn.
Aye.
Garrick.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Item number 1 in public hearings. A hearing on a dangerous building located at 703 12th Avenue North. Bruce Thorlson to explain.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Bruce Tarleson, Inspections Department, on a dangerous building action at 703 12th Street North. I had a report on 3 previous cases due to the length of the agenda. I'll hold off on those till next meeting. In the front of the packet, you're going to see a suggested motion for your consideration. I ask that you consider action on the motion after hearing all testimony of all parties in the case. There may be owners and other citizens that may also want to be heard. In your packet, you'll see a timeline. And in the timeline shows that this property most recently came to us in July of 2020 due to a fire at the structure. It now meets 7 of the 10 criteria of our dangerous building ordinance. You will see from the timeline that we provided for all notices and postings for this action. We received notification of the fire at this property from the fire department and acted as allowed and required by our codes. The structure was placarded on August 5th, 2020, and we have monitored it ever since. We provided the dangerous building notice to the owner as required. With time to allow action by the owner, inspections has not been given any indication that they intend to repair or demolish the structure. Assessors gave us a statement of evaluation that attests to the deterioration of the property. The assessor's statement is only one factor we use in making our determination, but it's a critical component and one of many factors in the ordinance that allow us to use this process. The deterioration and neglect to the exterior alone was enough to make the assessor's determination. Services to the property, the water was shut off in November of 2019. The gas service has not been used since May of 2018. In your package, you'll find pictures of this property. And I do have the fire department report if you'd like to see their pictures of the interior. The structure in its current condition is due to neglect and lack of maintenance, and allowing it to sit in its current state that attracted vagrants. The structure was written up as a substandard building back in September of 2000, and there have been many issues at this property since then, such as junk, dilapidation, junk vehicles, and most recently squatters. The structure is currently dilapidated due to the fire, and in our opinion is not possible or worthwhile to repair. Due to the squatters being inside the building that was not habitable, the inspections department was required to secure the home's windows and doors and did so on August 31st of 2020. We reviewed the fire department report on this property. The fire was determined to be started in the kitchen of this uninhabitable home, and there was no insurance on the property. I'd like to read a couple statements from the fire department report, and it gives an indication of how the owner is taking care of this property. Fire investigator James Garvey interviewed the property manager for the owner, James Pete Sabo, and her name was Sandy Graham. Sandy stated that she was out of town when the fire occurred. Pete told her that there was a fire and that a man named Frederick Thomas was staying at the home. It tells me that the owner knew there was somebody living in this home that didn't have services for a year or two. Sandy stated that the door to 70312 was closed up after the fire, but the morning of 7/28, the door was open, indicating someone had broken in. When James Garvey asked Sandy if she believes anyone else wants to start a fire in one of Pete's homes, Sandy stated, "The whole crew," and gave names of people. All of those people are connected in a way. Every one of them have said, "We are going to burn your homes down." It's been a threat for at least 6 months. Fire department interviewed James Pete Sabo. Mr. Garvey called and asked Pete what happened to this house. Pete stated that he was letting a homeless man stay in the home. Again, knowing that somebody was living in this home. No water, no heat. The home is uninsured, and he gave the man's name. I do want to remind the Commission of our great responsibility to protect private property rights, and our intent is always to allow rehabilitation, but we don't think that's possible in this home. Due to the current condition and inaction, we're taking this dangerous building action. We'd like to thank you for consideration. I'll take questions and yield the floor.
Any questions, commissioners? Is there any of the public who wishes to address this issue?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I have one observation. I do like that they have a recycling container right in front of the house, so that's a real positive that they are recycling there.
Thank you, Commissioner Pipgard. Is there anybody present who wishes to address this issue, please?
Come on up here if you'd
Mr. Sabo, if you want to speak, you come to the microphone, please. State your name.
Okay, I've owned that home for over 40 years, and the guy that wasn't exactly a homeless guy. He did lawns, he cut trees, he worked for me. He was sleeping in a truck, abandoned truck, and I was aware that he did sleep once in a while there. There was a nice couch, and as you can even see from this picture, the top of the house, I mean, the shingles are like new in it. The house is solid. I bought a licensed, bonded contractor to take the permit. I hope to work with the city building inspectors on this, move by move. It'll be open to them anytime they want. The basic house is solid. The fire was in an area probably 18 inches high by 8 or 10 inches wide. Somebody had lit a board, it made a little smudge and it went out. I would like to, after 45 years of ownership, I'd like to make it a new house again. And I've done lots of houses in this town, and they look beautiful, and the people are happy in them. And we know that there's a severe shortage for low-income housing, and I could put a roof, new wiring, all with bonded, insured contractors. And I'm sure the city of Fargo will keep a close eye on it too. I've mowed the lawn, shoveled the snow, and taken care of this building for 40 years. The city of Fargo took down the building right to the north of that building, and I've noticed for the last 10 years the city of Fargo has been coming there and mowing the lawn and shoveling the snow, and it's got to cost somebody money. Why put it in another vacant lot? And we have plenty of building inspectors, and I would enjoy working with each one of them on this. And they could check me for any irregularities that could be wrong. My builder's bonded and insured. And when the last house we did was on 19th Street. And the building inspector was stunned. He said, "You've added 50 years to this house by what you've done to it." And that was another one that they were considering to have as a dangerous building. And there's a single lady living there now, and she's delighted with it. And if I screw up, pull my permit, there's nothing I can do. I'd have to give away my house. But after 45 years of ownership, I don't remember the exact year I bought it, but I've owned it for a long time, over 40 years. And I promise you all that I'll make a decent house out of it. As I have quite a few houses in Fargo that just went under the wire. I just rebuilt whatever walls they'd punched in and windows they'd broken out. And you didn't need a permit for that. But I've kept a lot of houses available for the not so rich people. And these hotels cost $50 to $65 a night. And they gotta have it. They're freezing, so they steal for it. They steal out of my garage. They steal out of everyone's garage. Why not have more houses like this for the $500, $600 rate that they can afford versus robbing from us to pay their rent at a hotel? And I'll do it all with bonded, insured people.
Thank you, Pete. Is there anyone else wanting to speak?
Yeah, so I'm sensitive to the statement that he made about rehabilitating the house, and I especially appreciate the idea of providing shelter, low-income shelter for people that need it. But looking at the house there, I mean, that's not suitable for someone to live in. So the gentleman inspector mentioned that someone had been living in the house. When the fire occurred, we can't be having people living in houses like this. They either need to be brought up to code and livable conditions, or they need to be torn down and seized and redeveloped into actual livable spaces. Mr. Sabo owns 14 or 15 properties around the city. Numerous ones have been before the commission a bunch of times for years and years of negligent, lack of code problems, and this is the latest example. So I don't think the city should listen to, "Oh, I promise I'll fix it up." There was notices posted several months ago, and in the report it says that no action has been taken to either demolish the house or to repair it since then. So now he's asking you for more time. I don't think he needs more time. I think it just action needs to be taken. It either needs to be leveled or improved immediately, and there can't be any middle ground on that. And I think his other properties should be inspected, because the impression that I get is that he's buying cheap buildings, not doing repairs on them, and then renting them out to people for very low rates and just letting the building deteriorate and basically extracting the value of the building as small rent payments until it becomes in this state, and then it has to be torn down and we have an empty lot. So I think there's a pattern here.
Can you just give a name for the record, please?
Andrew Buck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else wish to speak to this property? Not a closed public hearing. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Next item, 39B, Cedar Crest, First Edition, 3361 West Track Drive. Approval recommended by Planning Commission on 9/1/20. Zoning change, general commercial to general commercial with PUD. First reading of the rezoning ordinance and planned unit development master land use plan. Donald Crest to explain.
Good evening, Commissioners. Donald Crest with the Department of Planning and Development. I'll be presenting the next two items. Your packets for these items include ordinances prepared by the City Attorney's Office. As the Mayor has stated, our first item here, 39B, is the Cedar Crest First Edition. This is a proposed affordable housing, affordable independent senior living facility here on West Track Drive. Just to orient you here, here's West Track Drive, I-29, 13th Avenue South, West Acres is over here. The site is undeveloped. That's what it looks like from the corner of West Track and they're looking northeast. And you will note that along West Track Drive, There is a Matt bus stop right in front of this facility. We'll talk more about that in a moment, as well as a bike lane. The property is currently zoned GC, General Commercial. The proposed zone change is to GC, General Commercial, with a planned unit development overlay. And there's also a PUD master land use plan that is part of the development plan for this that we'll look at in a moment. Commissioners, we've had a number of PUDs before your commission here in the last few years. This one is a little different. As you know, the PUD allows modifications of the underlying development standards of the zone. This PUD only requests 3 modifications: one to allow household living in the general commercial zone, one for a density of 38 units per acre, and one to reduce the parking to a ratio that's a little more in tune with the senior residents who will be living there. The 38 dwelling units per acre yields 120 units for this property, which is when you're working with these and the development and the financing of these, there's a certain economy of scale that needs to be reached. I'll let the developer talk about that in more detail. Here is the master land use plan. Again, shows 34th Street here, West Track Drive here, building facing. It's an H-shaped building, 120 units, 4 stories, to be developed along this property. This is actually part of the recommendation for approval. You approve this master land use plan. The applicant has provided a rendering of looking at the front there, what this could look like. This isn't part of the approval. This is just an example of what this is going to look like here. And so that's, again, a rendering from the applicant there. Just a note on the location. You know, we often think of affordable housing as being downtown or close to downtown, and we asked the applicant to do an evaluation for us here. Again, this is the site. This is West Track Drive. What's around there? You know, you think of that as a commercial, industrial area, but there actually really are quite a few services nearby. We've got a couple of grocery stores here. Of course, we have West Acres with all the services that offers there. Some entertainment venues here. And there is, again, we noted the Matt bus stop on there. That's Route 20, which here's our location here. Connects you all the way through West Acres, over here to Village West, out to West Fargo, and then, of course, back with the rest of the bus system there. That'll take you throughout the metro area. Commissioners, the applicant Don Sturhan of Mountain Plains Equity and Nate Volm with Goldmark are with us tonight, and they may wish to address the commission. The Planning Commission's recommendation is stated on your staff report and shown on the screen. This concludes staff's presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Don. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to the commission on this zoning change?
Thank you, Mayor and City Commissioners. Nate Volmuth with Goldmark Design and Development. I'm not going to, Donald did a great job of introducing the project. Myself and Don Sturhan are here to answer any further questions that you have.
Any questions from the commissioners? Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this project?
Good evening, Mayor Mahoney and members of the commission. My name is Don Sturhan. I'm with Mountain Plains Equity Group. We are the sponsor and the applicant of this project. I just wanted to introduce myself to you. We're based in Billings, Montana, although we've been doing work in North Dakota ever since our inception in 2003. This is a senior housing project that's dedicated to low-income senior residents that are on a fixed budget and a lower budget. It's financed primarily through low-income housing tax credits that are allocated through the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. I know you have a lot of items on your agenda, so out of respect for your time, I'll leave it at that unless you have other questions. Thank you.
No, we're very pleased to have low-income housing for our seniors, so thank you very much for considering us. And you'll find the weather better here than in Billings, I'm sure.
I already have. Yes.
We'll close the public hearing. Do I have a motion? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item C, Madeline's Meadows, third edition. Approval recommended by Planning Commission 7820, zoning change from single dwelling residential and public institutional to single dwelling residential and public institutional with the multi-dwelling residential. First reading of the rezoning ordinance and a plat of Madeline's Meadows, third edition. Donald Crest.
Thank you, sir. Again, Madeline's Meadows third edition to get oriented here. Here's Davies High School, 25th Street South, 73rd Avenue South, and this is the subject property here in Madeline's Meadows third edition. Madeline's Meadows third edition is a replat of existing lots in the Madeline's Meadows first and second edition. It doesn't actually create any new lots there. Here's some site photos from this morning. This is looking along 72nd Avenue South here. We're looking here. Here's the lots that are going to be that are involved in that plat. What's happening with those lots there is, I'll go back to this one. What's happening with these lots is they're actually getting a little shorter. We're widening 72nd Avenue by 8 feet, so that's why they are involved in this plat, but they are existing lots. Otherwise, their dimensions are not going to change. Just for reference here, this is the Golden Valley subdivision, or the Golden Valley addition. Over here, these lots will butt up against the lots in Golden Valley. Again, the zoning here, as the mayor stated, is SR4, which is a single dwelling residential, and PI for public institutional. This is a large drainage basin here. And we're going to change the zoning like this. We'll tie these two ideas together in a moment. Here's the plat. Here are those same lots. They're just 8 feet shorter there. Shows an 8-foot dedication of right-of-way. This lot here is getting larger. That was its old property line. This is its new one to accommodate a larger detention basin. This lot is being changed to MR1, which is a low-density multi-dwelling residential district, and a dedication of right-of-way for 73rd Avenue. This is just the same graphic that's in your staff report there, showing how the zoning would be changing there. Commissioners, as noted in your staff report, we received several comments from neighbors. The comment letters are included in your packet and summarized in the staff report. This is an excerpt from your staff report. Some of those neighbors may be here tonight. I haven't seen everyone here tonight. The applicant, John Eunice of Eagle Ridge Development, is with us tonight. There he is, okay. With us tonight and may wish to address the commission. Planning Commission's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. Note this is a contingent motion. This is really just a technical thing on planning and engineering's part. You can feel free to go forward to approve this. We won't record it until the final technical details are met. So thank you, Commissioners. That concludes staff's presentation.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to this rezoning? Anyone present who wishes to speak? If not, we'll close public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston. Aye. Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Horn.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you. Item D, application by Devron Incorporated for payment of low taxes exception pilot for the project located at 3001 University Drive South, which the application will use in operation remodeling of an existing facility plus a new addition for research and development, biotechnology, and manufacturing of therapeutic products. Jim Gilmore to explain.
Thank you. This pilot policy is a way we try to encourage more primary sector jobs in the community to try to grow the number of jobs we have here and improve the overall economic base. Aldebaran, this proposed site is on 30th Avenue South in University. They have acquired an existing building and have room for expansion to the south. Aldebaran has been on your agenda before as they've created other primary sector jobs, and we've really seen a good results from previous expansions. In 2016, they had 106 employees. They were projecting job growth over 5 years of 85, and what we found was in just 3 years, they created 192 additional jobs. Last year they came in, projected job growth of 105 jobs over 5 years, and they've actually created 117 in the past year, really even before they got started with that particular expansion. The pay raise or the pay range for the proposed expansion now, it would be 51 additional jobs. 20 of those would be between $15 and $20 an hour, 24 between 20 and 28. And you can see the others are over $28 an hour. So they're, again, they're projected 51 jobs over 5 years. If you look at past results, they tend to create jobs faster than they suggest. What I'd like to do next is have Mr. Mark Wolf from Aldebaran talk about the company, what they've been growing in, and kind of particular interest to probably all of us is they have been doing research related to how to address the COVID pandemic. Mark.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, dear commissioners. My name is Mark Wolf. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and the Chief Financial Officer of Aldebaran, and happy to address any questions for this project. Aldebaran has been extraordinarily performing in the latest years thanks to the investments in gene and cell therapies. And Aldebaran has been a pioneer in helping clients who engage in research in gene and cell therapy to bring products to market. This particular project here is for us to accelerate our investments. You've seen we've been able to beat our expectations very, fortunately. And this is another investment where we want to accelerate now research and development here in Fargo. We opened in 2018 the world's largest plasmid DNA manufacturing facility for GMP materials. So GMP materials are materials destined to humans for human trials and eventually for when the drugs are approved for treating patients. So we opened this in July of 2018, and the acceleration of the research and the demand has been such that we very quickly came back to you and asked for another project, which is our 189,000 square feet facility. So the previous facility we came to is the largest in the world. The one we're just building is 10 times the output of the existing one. So we'll be, for a long time, the largest producers of DNA in the world here in Fargo. DNA, just for non-scientists, and I'm a non-scientist, is that when you try to cure a disease which is induced by a mutation of a gene, you basically have to teach the cell to do something against it or to do something it doesn't do. And to do that, you bring sort of software back into the cell, and that is the DNA. And that is what we manufacture for 4,500 clients worldwide, and want to continue to help research there. And that's why we want to have this building dedicated to research and development to further enhance our capabilities and services for our clients. We are currently engaged in 40 programs with clients targeting vaccines for COVID, and then that's another factor telling us that we're on the right path to further accelerate and help our clients with research and treating very rare diseases and vaccines too. So thank you. Yeah, happy to address any questions.
We're very pleased with growth of Aldebaran, and in reality, you're going to help cure many diseases, and I know you guys had great success in a lot of different areas in medicine, so we would love to see you continue to expand. Is there anything else the public wishes to speak? Not, we'll close the public. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Gary.
Mark, thanks for growing in Fargo. If you don't receive the incentive, will you move forward with your growth here in Fargo?
We're not doing those programs specifically for the incentives, right? We're here to provide medicine and for treatment. So we do have locations outside of Fargo. The company founder is Homegrown Fargo, it's attached to Fargo, and we have been ever since happy with the environment here, so we would like to continue to do this here.
I'm not sure you answered the question.
Next program, we have invested already. We acquired a facility and we will invest in this location, but we have other location, other options. I'm sure eventually those other locations might be competitive and might service our needs.
This might be the first time that someone hasn't answered the question. Thanks.
Any other commissioners?
Mayor.
Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. One of the shining stars in our economic community is Aldebaran, and your investment in our community and the brilliance you bring to the rest of the world. So thank you for that. The reason I'm supporting this development is you don't have a single new job under $15 an hour, and I thank you for that also. You know, we've had others come in and get significant incentives for $13 an hour jobs. That has to change. We need a living wage if we're going to support people and partner with developers and investors, businesses like you. So this will be a good partnership. You're bringing 44 new jobs between $15 and $28 an hour. That's what this job prime sector growth is all about. It's a good investment for Fargo. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Aye. Strand?
Yes.
Gary?
No.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item E, continued from 10/19/20, continued to 10/19/20, special assessment list for business improvement district fees. Do I have a motion?
I move to continue.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Gary?
Yes.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston? Aye. Mahoney?
Aye. Special assessments for 2019 new construction city ordered sidewalks, project number SN 19A. Steve Sprague to explain.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I believe we can take F and G together, and I want to explain why we do sidewalks separately from the other improvement districts that we're looking at. When you think about an improvement district, like say you're doing a roadway reconstruction, we have a defined boundary in which that improvement district is happening. With the sidewalks, we could have one at one property and one 3-4 blocks away and one at another part of town. And so there's a separate part of the Century Code that addresses the sidewalks, and that's why we separate out the sidewalks. So we can do those two together.
So we will do F and G. Do I have a motion, please?
Well, there's the public hearings.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to their sidewalks? Anybody wishing to speak? And just for the public, what is the sidewalk? So you move into a house and we put in the sidewalk and then we special assess it over 25 years?
Well, that could be the new construction of the sidewalks, but we also do a reconstruction. So if we notice we have a sidewalk inspector and he goes around the town and identifies areas that have potential trip hazards and things like that, they're then noticed that we need to have that sidewalk improved, and the homeowners are given the opportunity to do it on their own or to do it through the city and then to assess it.
And the assessment, typically they pay off over how many years?
Is it 15? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't, it's 15 years.
Okay, thank you. No public comment. A closed public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
I have a question.
Oh, excuse me, Commissioner Gary.
There seems to be a mix here of items that people might request or that we just do on our own, like a mill and overlay. No one requests that, right? But someone might request the sewer being fixed in front of their house, correct?
Correct.
This is kind of a mix of those type of things in this list I'm seeing?
Not in this list. Things like where people are requesting, like sewer, like you're saying, they're not in this list.
You're correct. F and G, my fault. Okay, thanks.
These are engineering-led projects.
Gotcha.
Correct. Yep.
Roll call vote.
Preston? Aye. Pepcorn?
Aye.
Strand?
Yes.
Gary?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. Item H, special assessment list for following improvement districts. All have been approved by the Special Assessment Commission on 9/2/20. Sanitary sewer, paving, variety of different things. Steve, do you want to comment?
Sure. So we do have a list of, I believe it's 31 projects that, I guess with the two sidewalk projects, total about $50 million. 31 million of that is going to be a new bond issue, and the rest of it was on an old bond issue. And so there are some projects that we're recommending be set at 1% above the bond interest rate, and that's because they were in the bond covenants of the old projects. The new ones we're recommending being set at the 0.75 that was approved by the Special Assessment Task Force. We did have a couple of people that protested, and I haven't really seen them here tonight. I don't know if they're going to be here. And they were on BN 19A, which is 52nd Avenue South, and BR 18G, which was 4th Street South from basically from Main Avenue down to the water treatment plant.
Is there anyone present who wishes to speak to their specials?
Good evening, Mayor, Commission. My name is Andre Arneson. I'm a local business owner, property owner. The one that I'm addressing is on 52nd Avenue. And I'm a property owner of 5402 and 5404, which are my lots. I did address this earlier with the Special Assessment Committee, and basically they just kind of denied my request. Basically what I'm requesting is just kind of review the property. I've got an irregular shaped lot, and I'm not sure, Steve, are you guys able to pull up my lot to 5402 or 5404 off of 53rd Avenue?
We'll have to pull up an engineer. Steve's looking wildly around like he doesn't quite know what that question means.
Sure.
Where's
Just
your shop?
It's 5402 53rd Avenue South, and then 5404. And it's really short and sweet. It's just an irregular shaped lot. And so what I was asking for was possibly a reduction of the footage that's calculated for the special assessments. And the only grounds that I have is just kind of the fact that, again, it's a irregular shaped lot. So in future development of the property, it will be difficult to put a building on, that kind of thing, because it's a triangle lot. And so the frontage along 52nd Avenue happens to be about the largest portion of that. So there's the property. Then 5402 is the part designated, and 5404 actually goes down to the next buildings on that southwest corner there. The reason that I'm asking for anything here is just basically kind of stated off of, City of Fargo website here, and it states special assessment front footage is the number of linear feet the property occupies on the street, measuring across the front of the property. 35-foot offset is used determining special assessments for the front footage. Special assessment front footage is used for calculating special assessments. On an irregular shaped lot, the front footage used calculating special assessments may differ from the footage used of a lot. So with that being said, that's really truly the only reason that I'm even standing in front of you guys today, was just to consider the frontage there. And if you look to the east, this is a diamond or a triangle shaped lot. It's irregular in my opinion. And I guess that was kind of my thought process was, hey, what is an irregular shaped lot? And so what I was just specifically asking for was maybe a reduction in calculation of that footage for the special assessment.
Well, we're in luck because Dan Eberhard is here tonight, and he does that calculation, so I'm sure he's going to explain it to us. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening, Commissioners. What we did on this property, we reviewed it after the hearing. We do use a 35-foot offset, so we do have a setback there. The initial frontage was over 700 feet, and with the reduction using the 35-foot offset, it was under 600, about 685, I believe. The Special Assessment Commission reviewed this and thought the spread was good. The benefit is what we calculate, not the dollars. We apply the dollars after the benefit's been calculated, and they thought that calculation was good. On this lot, it's irregular in shape, except we can quantify it, and we did. If you look at that, at the lot, the full lot is being used. In the east corner there, we see a large sign that does occupy in that lot. So we know that whole lot, even though being irregular, it's usable space. For further expansion and development, it would be depending on the size of the structure that he was going to place on that property. Any questions?
So they verified your findings on what should be charged, is that correct?
Correct.
There was no change when he went to the commission?
There was no, they rendered no change.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to us? Commissioners have any questions on that particular lot? Commissioner Strand.
Thank you. Dan, what would be the assessment difference if there were a reduction in that irregular lot, I mean, how much is added to not just the benefit, but to the costs?
Well, in this case, there was a reduction just using the 35-foot offset. When you drop down off the 52nd Avenue and use that 35-foot offset, you're reducing that already. So you're reducing it some 25 to 35 feet at $313 a foot. So there was a reduction using the 35-foot offset that we use as policy.
Do you have any sense of the dollar calculation of how much that extra unused, looks to us unused, but there's a sign over there. How much does that add up to for a layman who doesn't?
Well, with the setbacks and that, there would be no, it's all benefiting lot, and it's all developable.
So according to your rules, what you're saying, Dan, is it follows the rules. You could use the rest of the lot. If the commissioners decided to decrease or reduce that, you normally would do that if it's unusable lot, basically?
Correct, if it's non-buildable.
So I see the owner coming up. Is that developable?
The other thing that I looked at for this to see if whether or not I had a legitimate argument was kind of the space and the other property owners further down for me. And I don't know if you can zoom that out, but what I looked at when I looked at the area that had been utilized for the assessment, there really are not a whole lot of lots that don't have, let's say, at least 100-foot setback, if you will. So they're measuring the frontage, and they're doing a 35-foot setback. However, when you span out and look at the additional lots that were utilized for the assessment, they don't have that loss of depth in the lot. And that's why I was just, again, stating that a triangle is half a square. And so if you square up just about, I would say 90% of all of the lots that were utilized for this, including the 35-foot setback, 95% of them have at least 50 to 100-foot depth. So the east end that is unserviceable, or you can't really do much with, that depth is not there. And so again, that's just why I was asking for a reduction based on usage of the property.
And while you're at the microphone, if I might, Mayor, what are your thoughts of developability of that space?
Well, eventually, and I'd really like to be able to do some light retail in there. Some examples are off of Veterans, where they've got just kind of a mini strip mall, if you will, 3 or 4 small businesses within that area. And that's what I hope to be able to do. However, again, that east corner is really what narrows in so tight that I've just got to limit the size of the building and such that I can put in there.
Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. Every once in a while, we hear of deferrals for ag land or other land that might not be moment present developable. Is that an option for this property, that maybe down the road, if it becomes developed or is developed, or is that even a consideration?
It is developable at this point.
At this point, so deferral isn't.
Deferral would not be available.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask a
Commissioner
question.
Preston.
So you said 25 or 35 feet?
35-foot offset.
And is that, can you point to it where that is? Okay, so it's inside the blue line or the aqua colored line. Okay. So basically the savings is the frontage on the west side. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. The difference, Tom just pulled it up, it's the actual property line is 738 feet. Using the 35-foot offset, we assessed 685 feet.
Right, okay. Yep. That's what I was assuming. Okay. So, an irregular lot, there's some ability to consider irregular irregularity of a lot? How are you defining that? Just that it's not developable at all?
No,
Or-
the idea of the irregular lot is the shape of the lot, not
Yes.
the developability of the lot itself.
Okay.
And again, when you do special assessments, the first thing we prescribe is the benefit. So we feel that there is a lesser benefit because of the shape of this lot. Being in the triangle portion of it, it's been reduced.
And I guess I'm not understanding the benefit when you get towards that point. What's the benefit for that portion?
Well, the benefit is, is it, and can it be supplied with water? Sanitary service, stormwater retention or drainage. And is it provided roadway access? So we have 52nd Avenue on a commercial lot, and we have the access on 53rd. So there is a benefit to that property. It has the water that has to come through it. That's why we reduced it by the 35 feet in that triangle portion. And that's why we do use a 35-foot offset. And that's what we've used that 35-foot offset since the 60s.
Dan, do you know what the charge is, what his specials are for that piece of property?
I can get that for you. I believe, you know your number for specials?
A lot. Well, they base it on what, $313 a foot?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so $313 a foot times the $685. I don't have the exact number right in front of me this second, but I did want to comment. The fact is he's stating there is a reduction of the 35 feet. Again, pointing out the irregular shaped lot. That 35-foot reduction is not specific to my irregular shaped lot. That 35-foot reduction or setback is for every single lot that was assessed for this. Nothing specific for my irregular shaped lot.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't aware there was going to be any math involved, but I do have the total, $214,405. You're welcome.
The full assessment is $227,079. But we also use, again, we assess the whole lot on a commercial setting. So we have a front foot cost, and the balance of after that is taken. We use a 150-foot setback and do the rest on a square foot basis.
So just for the public to know, is that if we reduce his charges, then the public makes up for that. So tax dollars pay for the difference. So when you're trying to figure out whether to give somebody a break, Dan has to follow all the rules equally for everybody in the community. So when it goes to the Specials Commission, that's the right for him to appeal to the Specials Commission. If they change it, then it comes to the commissioners. But if you reduce anything for any property, then the city of Fargo has to make up from it with either street tax dollars or property taxes.
Or the 1% that we charge over and above.
Yeah. Any other discussion on this? Mr. Strand? Can anybody find a solution? Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Yes, sir.
Mike Grollum. I'd propose a compromise where the city buys everything west of that billboard and uses it as a public right-of-way for whatever future use we may have. It's right next to the cooler, the ditch. We might be able to find some use for it, save him some money, and have some public land for whatever we might in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a motion? Move to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Further discussion? Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. I can appreciate both sides here. It just looks on face value like the shape of that lot is just gonna really penalize the owner with a development of that neighborhood with that 52nd Avenue improvement. I'm torn because I don't want to help put nails in their coffin to be able to survive. But I'm trying to figure out what that lot could be turned into and how soon. Maybe that, if here's my compromise. If we could defer this until it was developed, I'd be okay with that. Part of that lot that's developable, that isn't, that would be the future development, that whole eastern edge of that triangle, if we could defer it, that'd be my sense. Until it's developable, then the new people developing it will pay properly pay taxes.
So Dan, it meets the criteria that it's developable now though, right? So we can't, by our rules, we can't give a deferral, or can we?
It would be up to typically we run a deferral through the finance committee and then approved by the city commission. But in this case, I'd like to point out that it is developable to the point where there has been a sign placed on that parcel. So it doesn't prove that triangle as being totally non-developable. It can go to a higher use and has.
Mayor, I move that we refer this to the Finance Committee to study it and see what options there might be to consider any relief for the owner, and then to come back to the City Commission.
So you're pulling that one out?
Yes.
All the
It's
other
one
ones. The
item
motion
only.
is to approve the specials.
I see.
So,
I would amend it to just put this one item only.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
We need, any comments on that? We need to vote on the amendment, which is pull this one property out and have the Finance Committee address it. Roll call vote, please.
Strand,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Pepcorn,
Nope.
Preston,
No.
Mahoney.
Yes. Now we'll go to the regular motion to approve all the specials.
So moved.
No, it's already moved.
Oh,
I
I'm
just
sorry.
have to do roll call on it. Roll call, please.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Preston,
Aye.
Gary,
No.
Strand,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. We'll take a 5-minute recess and come back at 16:16. Call the meeting back to order. Great, we're having a great dialogue. This is an easy one. Item 40, table to 10/19/20. Recommendation for approval of the 76 South Corridor study, tabled from 9/21 regular meeting.
Move to table.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Pepcorn.
Aye.
Gary.
Yes.
Strand. Preston. Aye. Mahoney.
Aye. Resolution 41, resolution directing the issuance of refunding improvement bonds, Series 2020B, and prescribing terms and covenants therefore, and resolution directing issuance of taxable refunding bonds, 2020C, prescribing terms and covenants thereof, and creating a fund for payment of thereof. Ken Costin to explain, and I hear we got great rates.
Yes, Commissioners, I just wanted to see if our guest speaker is online. Terry Heaton, are you available for discussion? There she is.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so I just wanted to introduce Terry and just kick it off and say that the city of Fargo routinely issues bonds for our infrastructure. And in the case that we accessed the market today, and it was a busy day in the market, we had one new money issue, which means we needed money to fund these assessment projects that we just got done levying. And so the monetary amount of the bond issue was $29.5 million. That's routine in our amounts, and Terry will get into the details of the rates and that type of thing. The second issue was a $91 million refinancing of some of our existing debt. There was 4 issues that were consolidated into one for interest rate savings. So I'll pass it on to Terry to let her review the results of the ratings. We had very positive ratings, and we continue to get very good reviews from Moody's when they do our credit rating report. So Terry, take it away.
Thank you, Kent. Mayor Mahoney and members of the commission, we had a very good day in the market on your behalf. There was a new money issue for the projects that Kent just spoke about. The par amount of the bonds was $29,565,000. Competitive sale was held this morning on your behalf. And what a competitive sale means is that the underwriter is selected by the low bid on the day of sale rather than selecting the underwriter in advance, as we've sometimes done for more complicated sales. In the low bid today, you had 6 bidders, and it represented 41 financial institutions with syndicate bids. So it's a lot of interest in the market and a lot of demand. So it's a great time to be in the market. In fact, we are at 50-year lows right now, and that's why it's such a busy day in the market. The interest rate, which made me nervous to present this, we estimated it to be about 2.07% a month ago. And the results today, your interest rate, again, for a 25-year bond, 1.88%. Which is, I can't even believe saying that out loud. That's such a low rate. FHN was the purchaser. Rates are down so low that they're down almost 0.75% from a year ago, 2.25% from 2 years ago. So based on this rate, with your formula of adding 0.75% to the rate that you award the bonds for, the assessment rate will be 2.63%. And as noted, the original par amount of the bonds was $30 million. It's been reduced to $29,565 because you had a premium bid on your bonds. So you'll be actually issuing $435,000 less than you were taking to the market. So those are fantastic results. Do you want me to go on to the second refunding issue, Kent, Mr. Mayor?
That'd be fine.
Okay. Along with that, part of our services are always looking at your outstanding debt and looking for opportunities to reduce interest rates. And we looked at 4 issues that in total added up to a bond issuance of $93,305,000. Again, these are sizable issues that are there. And to take advantage of these historic low rates, again, this was a competitive bond sale. Strong demand, also 6 bidders. The low bid came from Baird, and I should note that they are a frequent bidder at the Fargo for the Fargo bonds. Their bid, again, a month ago we told you 2.01%, and gave me a little knot in my stomach putting that out there. But the actual bid came at 1.82% today. So the range of bids, they were 1.82 to 2.18. So again, much better than projected. At the time we put together the proposal to refinance these bonds, we estimated that in total you would save present value $13.7 million by refinancing these bonds over a 15-year period that remains. Because the estimate for the interest rates came in even lower, your actual savings are $15.5 million if you accept this rate. And again, we took $93,305,000 out to the market, and because you had premium bids, you're able to get the same amount of bond proceeds, but only have to issue $91,015,000, so about $2.3 million less. And along with the 50-year low in market rates, there's a lot of interest in Fargo bonds because of your very, very high credit rating, AA1 with a stable outlook. And they are impressed with your sales. And this continues during COVID. And so we talked a lot about the stimulus. Your staff talked about the stimulus money, the COVID impact, and all of that. So they're looking hard at that, and still gave you a stable outlook. And what they were most impressed about, because it's unlike what they're seeing in most other places, is that your sales tax is actually growing 4.8% year to date. So that was a great report card for Fargo and fantastic results in the market. So we do recommend the low bid for both bond sales.
Thank you, Terry. Perfect day to do the bids, and we're very pleased with the savings we get out of that. This speaks to how stable the city of Fargo is as far as our financial planning and the city itself. So thank you to all the citizens that are still spending money. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Just a quick comment. So Kent, would you say, I would summarize that we're probably one of the best performing cities in the country right now. Would you say that's a good assessment?
Well, I think that's an excellent opinion. And I appreciate your accolades. We feel we have an excellent team on board, and we are managing, I think, the city very well. On our report card, we do really well with regard to just our overall statistics and just the consistency of our management and the team that we have in place. And so we typically have clean audits, and that's a very good indicator of the depth and conviction of your financial team. And I have to give credit to Terry and her team with Baker Tilly. They've served us well for years and help us access the market. And we've experimented with a couple of different ways of deploying bond issues, and we've had some success with that as well to try to reach out to the retail investors. We didn't do it this time because of the ultra low rates, but thank you for that. I think we should be proud of our standings.
But Mr. Chairman, what I also meant to say is, no, our economy in Fargo is one of the best performing economies in the country. I think people don't, sometimes when you live here, you don't realize it. It's like, no, the majority of the country is not doing well at all, and we are doing very well. And we are an exception around the country, so we are very fortunate. So that was the point. I also want to obviously compliment our staff, but I want to compliment our city and our region for we're doing very well, and we're very blessed because a lot of parts of the country are suffering greatly. Thank you.
And I just wanted to add, Dave, just to add to that, we have about an hour to hour and a half conference call with the ratings analysts. We did that last week. And one of the things that they were impressed with, and they ask at the end, after they drill us with an abundance of questions about what's going on in Fargo, do you have any questions for us? And I always ask them, well, how do we shore up compared to other cities across the nation? And they use our sales tax indicator as one of showing significant strength. I said, well, how's our numbers looking compared to everybody else? And the answer was typically they're seeing a degradation of sales tax because of the COVID environment. And in our case, we're reporting a 4.8% increase. And so they were especially impressed with that. And for those that you were here, it was about a year ago or so, we had a downgrade. And part of the reason we got a minor downgrade was because of the decline in sales tax. So we've seen some recovery in that number, and this number is very positive, and it is up in rare air as compared to our peers.
Thank you. And Terry Heaton, thank you for your team and telling us to sell them today because it really worked out well. Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Garrick.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston. Aye. Mahoney.
Aye. Jim Gilmore, the recommendation direct staff to prepare a renewal plan and TIF district in the area of downtown adjacent to the Red River.
Again, this is a recommendation from the Finance Committee to create a tax increment financing district along the river, pretty much from the Great Northern Line tracks on the north, 6th Avenue on the south, river on the east, and approximately 4th Street on the west. The reason for the district would be to try to stimulate growth in the area and get some of the increased property tax revenue that would we project to occur in this area over the next 25 years. Some possible uses of that tax increment financing, public needs in the area include the demolition of the Fargo high rise, if that's the tract, or some sort of repurposing of that. The Mid-America Steel, there's a lot of buildings on that site that should be demolished. We've talked about trying to do a little bit more with the Civic Center Plaza, as well as try to have a pedestrian bridge along the 2nd Avenue corridor over 2nd Street to provide better access to the river. The process we have before we really begin in earnest to work on a TIF plan is to first come to the City Commission and see if it's something you want to approve, kind of the overall concept. With this particular case, I think there's a lot of different activities that are going to be needed along this or within this district, and as well as different projections based on the amount of growth we think could occur in the area. So in order to move forward with this, I really would like to have an informal meeting with you because there's a multitude of ways to spend TIF money in this area that may or may not create additional development, and to kind of focus in on what are your highest priorities for activities you feel are important in the next, in this near term, as well as what we should include in the long term that we may be able to address later. So the recommended motion would be to direct staff to prepare a renewal plan and TIF district for this. I would anticipate we'd spend 2 to 3 months developing a plan, working with the planning department to do the research on what conditions are there, looking at potential growth, and looking at what activities would spur additional property tax development within this area. We're not trying to do a new plan here. We'll draw on the riverfront plan we've had in the past, the in-focus plan, as well as Go 2030. There's a lot of planning ideas, and this plan is really more focused on implementation of those plans rather than doing an additional downtown plan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Gary.
Have we asked the other subdivisions what they think about this?
That would be done as part of the process. We would have to notify the county, schools, and certainly the Park District also. That's required within the Century Code to notify them of any hearings that will be required to have on this plan.
And the reason I asked the question for those who may not know is if we do this, we're taking the money from the schools. Instead of it going to the schools, it'll go to us. The money that they would otherwise levy to create new schools, to have food programs, to do busing, we would take that money and we would spend it on developers. Same goes with the parks, same goes with county, vector control, the airport. So we would take that money out of their pockets and put it in ours.
Any
Mr.
other
Chair,
comments?
I have a question for Jim. So Jim, is this area in the opportunity zone?
Yes, it is.
So could you combine, can you combine things like that?
The opportunity zone, actually the opportunity zone extends down to 2nd Street South. So the Prairie St. John's property is outside of the opportunity zone. I want to correct that. But I think there's a lot of resources that are going to be needed to encourage development in this area. And how the TIF district works is the property tax base for the schools, the county, and the Park District stays the same. So, if it's $1 million right now, they would continue to receive property taxes for that on that value based on whatever mill levy they would levy each year. It's the growth
that would go to the city as TIF revenue. So if there's no growth, then there's no revenue. So the idea is to spur growth, to create TIF revenue. So in the long term, 25 years from now or 20 years from now, the county, the schools, and the Park District, and the Airport Authority would all receive more money in the future than if we do nothing.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Preston?
Jim, if you could explain Opportunity Zone and how that might impact this.
The Opportunity Zone is a federal program that provides some tax incentives to people that would invest in this area. And so, you know, let's say you had a capital gain from Google stock or Bitcoin or wherever, and then you invest in this area, you have some tax, you delay having to pay those capital gains taxes. You eventually pay them, but the money that you make on your investment in this, there's a tax savings on that also. So it's a federal program that's a way that attracts investment. Some projects downtown that we know are Opportunity Zone funded include the Mercantile Development, the Kessler Development, the Gateway development that's happening now by the Frying Pan. So those development groups have been able to attract capital because it's in an opportunity zone and people are more likely to invest in projects than if it was not in an opportunity zone.
So this would be a federal tax benefit?
Yes, it's federal tax, not state or local.
Gotcha.
Any other discussion? Mr. Gary?
I just want to make sure the public knows what that means when you said that we'll still get taxes up to the value that's at currently. We're going to draw a circle around this area, and for 25 years, anything that's developed here, improved, developed, new, whatever, doesn't then go to the schools, the parks, vector control, or the county. So this is the most valuable land in North Dakota that we're looking at. This is the most desired land in North Dakota without oil underneath it. We do not need a TIF to develop this. This is very desirable. We have a TIF downtown right now that's been going on for 40 years. That's older than me. It's been in Fargo longer than I have, and I was born here. So when they say 25 years, that's a starting point. So when this land quadruples in value in the next 10 years, the schools are going to raise your taxes because they don't have enough money, and we're going to be putting this in our pocket. This is a bad idea. It's a bad system.
Actually, Jim, I think you need to explain that the TIP would be used for public good. So if you do a bridge across Second Avenue, if you do a plaza, if you do other things that are public good, we don't have to raise taxes to do those projects.
That's correct. This would be an additional tax resource. We do have a TIF that went almost 40 years. It did end. Just this year, the legislature now limits them to 25 years, in part because of they didn't want them to go forever.
Any other comments? Mr.
Sure,
Preston?
I could just make a comment. I do think that, yes, these mostly are public kind of projects, but it will bring value to the properties that surround it. So ultimately, the school district will benefit, seems to me. And let me ask one question, Jim. So if the county and or the school district and or the park district, any one of them say no to this, does that kill it or what?
No, it does not. There's some legislation that requires, if we're providing property tax incentives, giving money to a developer, that the county or the school can opt out of that. There's no opt-out for whether or not there's a TIF district. I don't know, at least that's my interpretation of the Century Code.
Right.
Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, what I hear you asking us to do is to approve the creation of a renewal plan. It isn't like the final plan, it's to give permission to go put this together to then come back to us to see what that would look like conceivably. That's right. So here's where my head goes. I agree with Commissioner Gehrig, this is the most prime property maybe in this whole part of the state, or in the state, some might say. I also look at this and go, this is our downtown, this is our footprint, this is our future. So I want you to think big. Roll in the thinking of the 2030 plan, roll in the thinking of the downtown in focus, feedback from people, the engagement that took place. Study what has happened in Winnipeg with the Forks. Go down to Sioux Falls and look what they've done with the riverfront there. And I asked that respectfully that in the meantime, we don't be coming back to our commission and try sell some of these parcels in the moment until we know the bigger plan. We've already had some requests to buy some of those properties. And I would say put them on hold till we get a bigger vision in place, engage the community as much as we can, think big, think about our neighbors across the river, how this blends with Moorhead and with Minnesota in a grander scale. And hopefully, Commissioner Garrick, when we come out of this, if we do, and I'm with him, I don't always support TIFs. But if I do, I want it to be for the greater good and for a better future. So I'm really eager to see what you come up with, and I hope you all surprise us.
Mr. Garrick.
In 25 years, my kid will be my age. It's not helping the schools. Mid-America Steel, that's that location. We're taking tax dollars. We're going to use the tax dollars to clear that area off for a big developer to come in, not have to pay the cost of that development. Okay, that's what this is for.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Okay, now roll call vote.
Pipcorn?
Aye.
Preston? Aye. Gary?
No.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes. Now, I know there's a lot of people here tonight, but I want to understand is the reason the mass ordinance is not under public discussion is what Commissioner Strand had requested was that we look at two different types of ordinance and we will receive and file. We will not enforce or do any type of a mandate passage tonight. It would only, but if we needed an ordinance, we would do that. Next slide, Ty. I'd like to remind you, presently, effective of August 17, the commissioners voted to do a mass directive. And on that, the Board of Commissioners of the City of Fargo strongly appeals to the good judgment and the common sense of residents, visitors, businesses of Fargo to comply with the following. And you can see residents and visitors within public spaces, common areas, private business in the City of Fargo are strongly encouraged to utilize face coverings while in those public spaces and unlikely to maintain a 6-foot space between themselves and other people as recommended by the Centers of Disease Control. We are also strongly encouraged to continue practicing proper distancing whenever possible, and residents and visitors are strongly encouraged to practice healthy hand washing and hygiene habits, including regular disinfection of commonly touched surfaces. That is the present directive we have. Now, the difference between a directive and a mandate is directive is strong, good advice. It's basically the commission is not penalizing you, fining you, enforcing it with the law enforcement or having anything else happen. It's just that the commission feels strongly to knock down the COVID that we need to follow this practice. We did a directive in the spring as well, once we told people to stay home for a period of time, and we knocked the COVID numbers down. This is the same idea on the directive. Next slide, please. Commissioner Strand and Eric Johnson have drafted this as the mass mandate proposed. And again, all that we decided tonight is if this was to be a mandate, is this the wording you want, Commissioner Strand? And these are the different areas where he has gone through with Eric Johnson and added a little bit more definition of the exceptions and what goes on, because there are exemptions on this one, which you can see are quite a few. In addition to that, Ty, you got the next? There's one with a penalty and one without. So the first one would be just that first page. If you wanted to add a penalty, this would be B, the non-criminal offense and shall pay a fee of $100 as provided by section 10305C of the Fargo City Municipal Code. So this is the one that would have the enforcement. So I turn it to Commissioner Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you all for, this is a really good example of what our country is all about when people stand up, speak up, get engaged, and participate. And it takes all of us in the community to evolve a way forward that is for the greater good and for the protection of the individual rights. So I want to start with acknowledging the people who are passionate, who care, who show up, and who have a voice in this and want to participate in this process. That's really, really important and appreciated. Second thing I'd like to do is, I think it's okay to put out some good energy to our president right now. We as a country, we have leaders that are being hit with COVID. It's really uncertain times. And we have a lot of risk with our way of governance. So just if we could, all of us in our thoughts, put out good, loving energy to our leaders and their families who are challenged and who are struggling. I really think that's appropriate. We need to come together as one voice for in this United States that we're in. Mayor Mahoney made a reference to the timeline. We started hearing about the mass discussion in late July, and when that was brought to the commission, and I brought that to the commission, the initial volley was for a directive to ask the people to participate and cooperate and in the spirit of working together through these uncertain times. What's a real critical part of that timeline is that directive expires November 9th. I want us all to know that this discussion here tonight, a lot of folks think we're voting up or down a mask mandate tonight. What we're really doing, if it goes forward, is opening the door to have this tool available basically a month from now, if it's needed then. That's really what it boils down to. There is no implementation now or until then. If we bring this through tonight, and I have no assurance it will pass or get through, then we will take it to the next meeting, October 19th, for a first reading, and then we'll continue to a second reading. So, and then right after that is November 9th. So that's the timeline we're all looking at. Is what can we do? What do we need to be prepared to do if our numbers and our trends, the COVID infection rates and positivity rates, if they continue worsening? In my opinion, it's best to have tools available to act upon if we're called to do that at that point in time. So I hope everybody gives us room to weigh and balance these issues against each other, knowing that the gauntlet isn't dropping now. This is a door opening to an option going forward, if we need to, and I sure hope we don't. But we're compelled to act prudently if this pandemic continues to go the wrong direction, despite all our best efforts. So I'll summarize one more thing. And again, thanks for everybody for your feedback, and thanks for the people who've become a resource to me and to the mayor and to the other commissioners and our department heads. I'm learning a lot and I'm listening as best I can. Where I've landed as just one commissioner here in this discussion tonight is to advance, given the feedback I've had. Not that we will be there in a month and not that it'll be needed, but where I've landed is to simplify our discussion, to look at a mask directive mandate that would include penalties at that point in time if we need it. We can, I assume, negotiate the penalties between then and now if they're implemented. We can negotiate the timelines. I'd also like to see a sunset clause that's speeded up from the end of next year. You know, my recommendation was to have this reviewed every 90 days or something like that. So, to forward the discussion, simply.
Mr. Strand, just before you do that, on the suggested motion by Eric Johnson.
I'm modifying it, Mayor.
You're modifying it, thank you.
I move to receive and file an ordinance with penalties relating to face coverings and social distancing to reduce risk of transmission of COVID-19 virus, and to place the proposed ordinance on the October 19th agenda for a first reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. And if I could speak.
Commissioner Preston.
I guess I'm going to be a little bit more adamant about the need for this and the urgency with it than Commissioner Strand probably was communicating. The number of positive cases that we have in our community is the highest it's probably ever been. We have a higher positivity rate that is a concern, as well as we are entering the cold weather with flu season, and hospital beds are filling up with other individuals, And it's getting a little bit concerning there. We are seeing higher hospital admissions and a higher number of deaths across the state from this particular virus. It's not something to fool around with. And I know there's lots of controversy. We've heard it about the efficacy, the effectiveness of masks, but there's also quite a bit of evidence, and there's a lot of support locally for masks providing protection not only for the wearer, but for individuals around the person. I also have to comment that we are not following our own policy here in that our chairs are not 6 feet apart. And I have had conversations with people that don't dare come to these meetings because of individuals that are sitting in the crowd. You're not 6 feet apart and you're not wearing a mask. Now you have to understand that individuals that are concerned and believe that masks help are not going to have the freedom necessarily to enter this room because of that. So I would really encourage us for this next meeting that we have our chairs appropriately spaced and that we move forward with a penalty clause. Now, let's clarify here. This penalty clause is similar to a traffic citation. Nobody's going to get arrested unless, and this is true right now, when a business has indicated that a mask is required and a person does not follow that, then you can be arrested for disorderly conduct. That's true at any point with any reason that a business decides that they want you off their premise. So what we're talking about here is something much more close to a traffic violation.
Commissioner Pipcorn?
Mr. Chair, just a couple things. So at the beginning, remember, it was facts, not fear. And the facts are, I'm just as protected as you are wearing that mask of COVID-19. COVID-19 passes right through that mask. Isn't that correct?
No, it isn't.
No. It is absolutely.
Okay, no public comment.
So, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner will learn not to ask rhetorical questions to the crowd.
I apologize, but basically a virus, it goes right through the mask. And so for us to start mandating something that doesn't work, that doesn't make sense. And as far as the people, okay, here's how it goes once again. If you behave yourselves, you can stay in the room. You're welcome to, but if you don't, you're going to be asked to leave. And if you don't leave, then the police will escort you out. Is that clear?
Let's just restore order.
All right.
Let's go ahead and make your comments, please.
The masks are not effective with the virus, period. That's proven. The coronavirus passes through. And so it's false to tell people that they're going to be safe by wearing that. And as far as sitting 6 feet apart, it's liberty. If you don't want to sit next to each other, then you don't have to. You can go someplace else or watch it on TV or on the internet. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Gehrig.
Yeah, no one's going to
Quiet in the
convince
room, please.
anyone of anything at this point. There's some people who believe it's certain, facts and numbers, and then the other side can bring up facts and numbers too. So I'm not even going to try to attempt to ask that rhetorical question. What I want everyone to consider is the enforcement. So let's just assume for a second that we have a mask mandate, a law requiring people to wear masks in public. Okay, if there's no penalty, then we've done nothing. We're virtue signaling to those who believe that we should have masks, right? So that should be thrown out the window. That's pretty much what we have now, right? It doesn't do anything different than a directive versus a mandate versus whatever we want to call it. It still doesn't do anything, okay? If we have penalties, we have created a bunch of new, very real unintended consequences. We will greatly increase the number of police contacts with civilians, resulting in more actions against our civilians. That is a very true statement. Some of these interactions will be violent. They will be violent. We've seen it happen. Go on Facebook, go on YouTube, go on whatever you want to see, and watch the mother of three get tased at a football game, okay? This is happening in real time, and we're telling our police force to do that. I'm not going to do that. If someone is fined and they can't afford to pay a fine, Eric, what happens if I don't pay my speeding ticket? Eric Johnson.
Yes, you can, if you don't pay, you might get a warrant for arrest for failure to appear, and
We're going to put otherwise lawful people in jail because they're not wearing a piece of cloth over their face. This is about enforcement. Are you willing to do that to your neighbors? The number of calls to police is going to dramatically increase for something as small as not wearing a piece of cloth across your face. There are going to be people who are going to be on the phone. Mrs. Crabtree's going to be on the phone all the time telling on her neighbors, okay? This is going to happen. People are going to use it as a way to get to people, all right? If you ever had a neighbor you didn't like, that neighbor's going to call the cops on you for mowing your lawn without a mask on, all right? It's going to create distrust between the residents of Fargo and the police. If you're always afraid that some cop is going to approach you because you're not wearing a face mask, you should be the most against it. This is going to happen to people like that. Exactly, and is it a good thing? It's not a good thing.
Faith?
We will dramatically increase the amount of police interactions. It'll cause distrust between the citizens. It'll negatively impact our resident-to-resident interactions. And in some cases, it will turn violent between residents. And this is a good faith attempt. I'm not saying that it's not. It's a good faith attempt to lower the COVID cases. But we're going to have created a lot of different problems that are very real problems that other communities have experienced. This is not a guess. I'm telling you what will happen. So even if you believe the mask mandate might lower the cases of COVID, if you believe that, I still want you to consider what a mask mandate will do. You will put people in jail. You will increase interactions. You will make the police do things to citizens that are otherwise lawful that you would never want to have done to you. All right, so consider these things before you just start saying a mandate will fix the problem. There are other problems that will happen.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Strand?
Go ahead.
I just want to respond a bit to the fact that masks don't work, in that if any of you have not seen the video that Dr. Paul Carson, who is on our COVID task force, had shown in the last news conference that we did, it's a really good example of how masks do work. And in fact, the virus travels on particles that come from a respiratory system, and masks will, and there are certain masks that are better than others. This one's probably one of the better ones. Double cloth masks are better than single cloth masks. So they do work. And in regards to enforcement, it would be really, I think, helpful to talk to some other cities and states that have implemented this. We are already seeing acts of violence towards private businesses that have chosen to require masks. So we are seeing a little bit of that. But what I have, at least what I have read and seen, Colorado was a good example. They saw a 25 to 30% increase in the usage of masks when they put a mandatory mask in place. And at least what was reported by Colorado, very few problems. The enforcement is it's not so much actually having police enforce something, it is the threat of enforcement that will get people to actually, and there's going to be a certain portion of the population that's never going to wear masks. I agree fully with that. But there's a portion that aren't taking this quite seriously enough. And what this would do is say, this is serious. You need to wear a mask.
Mr. Strand?
Thank you, Mayor. And, you know, we get opportunities to get civics lessons about how government works and how we as a community work. And just to put it out there, Commissioner Preston, for example, carries the public health portfolio since he arrived at the commission in the June election. Prior to that, for 4 years, I carried the public health portfolio. Prior to that, the mayor, Dr. Mahoney, carried the public health portfolio for I'm not sure how many years. But you will see when there are moments in time that we carry a portfolio, we try to be closely connected to the issues in that department or in that aspect of the governance of the city. You know, there's transit, and there's utilities, and there's wastewater, and there's sewage, and there's water treatment plants, and there's the police department, and there's the fire department, and so on. Public health is a really big part of our city governance, as is public safety. So I ask everybody, just to give us room to try move forward to what we need to do for the safety of our people down the road if this pandemic doesn't turn around and improve. And in the public health discussion, I asked our other commissioners to listen to our experts in those fields and honor them as best you can. I wouldn't want to be in Desi Fleming's shoes when she's our director of our public health. It's our job to set the expectations for community activity and behaviors and safety. So again, this gauntlet isn't dropping tonight. We can discuss. I look forward to visiting with Chief Zabalski about his experience. I understand you have some, and insights, and reaching out to our law enforcement. How can we approach this so that if there are infractions put into place, that we can manage them reasonably, just like a parking ticket, or going down a sidewalk with a bicycle ticket, or a skateboarder in traffic or in the public ticket, or being out in the parks after dark ticket, or going over the speed limit ticket, or running a stop sign ticket. It's what we're talking about. So please continue engaging, but try give us some room to aim for the greater good for the public, especially in light of the trends that we're facing, that this is not right now. We're in a crisis. And even so, we can't act on this till weeks and weeks from now. So I hope you work with us and help us all shape it to the best we can.
Chief Zabalski, I almost forgot you're in the audience. We have a new police chief. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear how you feel about your police officers here in Fargo walking up to an individual, asking them to wear a mask. They say no. What are you going to do?
Well, Commissioners, I was basking in the brief honeymoon period that occurred just a couple hours ago. So I guess that's over. There is no good answer to this. Everyone's concerns are legitimate. It does put the police department in a very precarious position. And we, from an experience in a previous employer, it created some hostility from business owners who felt that maybe they were being targeted. They were already under certain mandates to reduce the amount of people in their businesses. And so we proceeded from an educational perspective, even though there was a enforcement piece to the resolution. The directive to the police department was that unless something was extremely egregious, we were going to educate, advise, but I do have concerns about calls for service. We did see issues where we had people randomly calling and saying, hey, I see this person at this store. They're not wearing masks. That does pay, and that happens in places an undue burden on the police department in terms of response for service. So again, both sides, I think, have legitimate concerns. I don't see that there is a definitive answer. And I guess I would just encourage the commission to continue to have these discussions and action plans, and we'll do our best to work together and figure it out.
Perhaps you don't know the answer to this yet, but currently the policy of Fargo, the police department, is to go on all calls. If you get a phone call from a resident, you're going to go there when you have time. Is that still going to be the policy while you're chief? If my neighbor calls and says I'm parked too close or too far away from the boulevard or whatever, the cops come to my house. Is that still going to be the policy?
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of a broad question at this stage for me to answer.
The point being, if someone calls and says I'm mowing my lawn without a mask, are you going to show up at my house?
I think that's the expectation, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So this is a difficult question. I know we've had passion on both sides. Not only is it a difficult question, but it's an emotional question. One of the things you have to be careful when you start mixing your emotions with decisions, sometimes your judgments change a bit. In our transit department, you have to have a mask before you can board a bus. One of our transit workers walked up to somebody, said, put on a mask. As he walked away, he was cold cocked from the back, knocked down. He went to the hospital. Security guard came over, asked the gentleman to put on a mask. Same thing happened to him. We had to call the police in to arrest the gentleman for knocking our people down. From the emails we've received, this is a very emotional issue. I don't like to put enforcement in if we're not going to plan on using enforcement. Minnesota's mandate has enforcement, nobody's getting arrested. Who got arrested in Minnesota? I won't ask that question of the group. But you're not enforcing it. So if you're doing a mandate just to get better behavior, why can't we get better behavior through education, as the chief talked about? We know we're at a crisis period. Our numbers are going up. We had a COVID virus. We have to live with that COVID virus and figure out how to manage it. The president thought he was well bold enough that he wouldn't catch it. He caught it. Not only did he catch it, but a lot of people's staff caught it. So it's catchable, it's committable. It's done things nobody ever expected. It's spread like we never thought. Desi and I are hoping going into the fall we'd be down to 2%. We're running 6 to 8% right now, people catching COVID. We're doing more testing than we've ever done. We're focally going into our nursing homes. We're focally going into hotspots, and we're trying to knock the number down. And we need all of you to do that. But when I was originally shown this ordinance, I was told it was receive and file and sit there until we needed it. The motion made tonight is to bring it into action in November. And I think if I wait till November to figure this thing out, I'm going to have emails every day for the next 4 weeks. And thank you. I haven't been able to answer everybody's email, but we got a lot of interest in this. But again, as a physician, civil unrest is bad. If people are resisting arrest, or I send my police officers out, at a time when we're asking for less police interaction and more interaction with the community, I'd go with education. COVID-19 is here. We have to figure out how to manage it. And if we don't do respectful distancing, if we don't wear masks when we're up close, and if we don't wash our hands, we're going to catch it. And, you know, easy thing as a surgeon, if you accidentally forgot to wash your hands and we're in a bloody case, everybody knows, right? So you learn to wash your hands before and after case. You learn to do certain things you do. When we eat, we learn how to wash our hands before and after we eat. The easiest thing is to spread this disease because it's spreadable. It's easily spreadable. So I'm going to favor the side on this particular aspect is education and asking for the people of the community to stand up. When we needed 7 billion sandbags, our people responded and took care of that. We know how to fight a flood. We have a real hard time fighting a virus. This has been the most difficult task we've had. And I'd rather do things that unite us rather than bring us apart. And I'm a bit concerned that a mandate will cause us to have civil unrest and people get into fights and be violent with each other. So, any other comments on this?
Mr. Chairman, if I could just, you know, I think that certainly at any point we could pull the penalties out if we decided not to do that. But it would be good, I think, to do a little bit of research with other states, cities, talk with the police department as well, the health department in regards to enforcement. And what we can do, as I understand, is go through the first reading and the second reading can be delayed. So we could act on the first reading, however, whatever form we would want, and still wait with the second reading. So it's not on a track that's not stoppable, is what I'm trying to say.
Eric Johnson, correct?
Well, yes, you certainly can, you know, it's a multi-step process and you can stop at any time along the way. I think the one sort of odd but practical issue is just if you stop it, then and you haven't set a time when it's going to come back in advance, there may be another sort of wasted meeting, you might say, where you had inactivity, and that's the challenge. So it's from this point forward, it's receive and file, and then first reading and second reading. If you stop any time along the way, if you want to have certainty and minimize the number of meetings, you have to have it on a schedule. Otherwise, you can. But again, you can have a special meeting, or you could authorize the mayor to put it on, something like that. So there's some ways to do it, but it's just a little bit of a practical problem.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
Yes.
Gehrig? Pepcorn?
No.
Mahoney?
No.
Mayor?
Mr. Strand.
I make another motion. I move to receive and file the ordinance with penalties as I had stated previously, but without the requirement that it's obligated to be placed on the next agenda for first reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second to understand the rationale.
If I might?
Yes.
You expected your statements indicated you expected this to be presented as a receive and file. I'm not going to quibble with you with that. If that works, if that can keep this tool available in our war chest, if it's needed to be called upon, that keeps it alive for that purpose. If we don't receive and file it, we're weeks away. So I'll honor your intention and our initial foray into this, if that helps with the notion of making this tool available. And then I believe what that would require is another commissioner to put it on an agenda. I think that's correct for a first reading after we receive and file.
Eric, can you clarify that, please?
Yeah, I mean, if you could have that understanding, that's certainly the case, that two commissioners could put something on an agenda.
Can Commissioner Strand bring it back?
Well, I think we're in not previously charted territory, to be perfectly candid. You know, I think you should put it into your motion as to how it would come back if it's going to be received and filed. It's in effect like a tabling otherwise.
It's really just approving the language, am I wrong?
Pardon me?
You're really just asking to approve the language. That's what you're actually trying to do.
It's not approving anything. It's having it available to debate going forward to act on if need be.
Any other discussion? Mr. Preston, you understand the motion that you seconded now?
I understand the motion. I'm not certain I quite understand the rationale yet, but
Just for clarification, Eric, it's considered the first motion was it would have a first reading next session. This new motion says it's received and filed. It's in the toolbox. Can it be back by any commissioner, as present rules are?
Well, yes, you can put it on the agenda. It's just whether it's ripe for first reading when you put it on the agenda. That's the issue.
Okay.
You know, again, typically that is done by motion.
So Commissioner Strand, as you would be an honest man, I would suppose you're not really intending and pulling back for first reading. You're intending that we're going to receive and file and have it as a tool if we need it.
If we need it, and I would suggest to all of us that, you know, Eric, Mr. Johnson suggested that we talk to our departments impacted, like our law enforcement and our police departments, listen to each other, find out how we can evolve this to be as palatable as possible if it's ever implemented. But you know, I just really hate to see us not receive this and not have this available if the crisis continues and worsens.
Commissioner Pepcorn.
So if we do that, then this will continue on and on and on and on, and we'll keep getting just tons of emails and messages and on and on and on. So that, I don't think that's a good thing either.
Commissioner Preston.
Mr. Chairman, if Commissioner Strand, it sounded to me as we were talking here that it's the penalty clause that's the issue. It seems to me pulling that out instead would be a better option here.
Mr. Strand.
In theory, Commissioner Preston, we could advance two ordinances, one with a penalty.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And one without, you know, and that's an option any of us could implement or think about, of course. And, you know, yes, Commissioner Pepcorn, this might put it on a future agenda and we might be talking the pandemic again.
The motion you made was with penalties, or your motion is now to receive and file both ordinances?
The motion I made was to receive and file the ordinance with penalties.
Which was seconded, right?
Yes.
So we need a vote.
Ready? Discussion? Roll call vote.
Strand?
Yes.
Preston?
No. No. Excuse me.
Gary?
No.
Pepcorn?
No.
Mahoney?
No.
Mr. Chairman, if I could suggest another motion.
Okay. Mr. Preston.
I would suggest a motion to be that we receive and file. I would say receive and file both options, penalty and non-penalty, and that we set the first reading. No, we can't do first reading of two. Can we, Eric? No, that wouldn't be good. So receive and file both options with it to be on the agenda again next meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Garrett.
So we still need a motion to put it up for a first reading, right? So when receiving and filing doesn't do anything, it doesn't even really save it, right? We still have to vote to have a first reading, is that correct? So you're saying that you want that first reading in that next meeting, or are you just saying we're gonna have this discussion again next
It
meeting?
would be a decision on which one to advance.
Okay,
So it wouldn't be the first reading.
thank you.
So
Unless
Eric,
we had 4 votes.
so Eric, if it fails tonight, we just don't pass it. Next meeting, if suddenly came along, we said we want to do first reading, can be advanced at that point.
Yeah, there's a requirement of receipt and filing at least 1 week, but that can be waived. So it's just a matter, somebody has to put it on the agenda, but the waiver does require
4 votes, right?
4 votes, yeah.
So it sounds like it still needs some work on vetting and a variety of different things that need to happen. It could be brought next meeting if we wanted to with going away from the receive and file. And you're saying both you need a little more discussion with the new police chief who has just got over his honeymoon and to kind of vet with different people. So you moved a motion. We have a second. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Preston,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Gary,
No,
Pepcorn,
no,
Mahoney,
No.
I've got a motion.
Oh, thanks. Item 44, applications for property tax exemptions for improvements made to buildings. Do I have a motion to approve?
I so move.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Pepcorn,
Aye.
Strand,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Preston,
Yes.
Mahoney.
Aye. Nathan, are you here? Nathan Bierman? Oh, he stepped out and he came back just in time. Flood project and acquisition updates. We've made great progress, I think, Nathan, and continued work on this project. And you're doing a great job. What else can I do to fill time here?
Thank you. Tried to walk in as quick as possible, but we're coming upon the end of another construction season, so we figured it'd be a good time to update you guys on the progress of the flood projects so far to date and kind of what we have planned for next year, as well as a discussion on the preferred alignment within the Oak Grove neighborhood too that we've been working on the past year here. So first, just quickly touch base on the projects completed since 2009. So you guys have seen this slide before, only we continually update it as we keep on getting projects completed. So as you know, on the right-hand side, the map that you show, anywhere you see a colorful line on that map is where we have been since 2009. So we've been rather successful. We've constructed over 22, actually approaching about 22 and a half miles worth of levees and flood walls since 2009. And I just want to make sure that it's aware to everybody that all the projects that we've completed to date are built to safely accommodate the flow through town with the Diversion Authority's Plan B at 37 feet through town on a 100-year event. Unfortunately, though, of course, in order to be successful, as we have been on building those levees and flood walls, we've also had to purchase a lot of properties since 2009. To date, so far, we're sitting at 254 full property acquisitions completed, and we're actually approaching close to 400 since 1990. In addition to the full property acquisitions, we've also purchased 90 private property easements where we've been able to build a levee or flood wall in the backyards and not had to acquire the entire parcel. The good news, though, is that we're coming close to the end of these acquisitions. We're down to 9 full property acquisitions remaining in the city, so we're getting close, as well as 30 private property easements. So where are those acquisitions still remaining in the projects we're working on? First one, I'll start up on the north and work our way south here. So the first project, this project actually started here this past month, a couple weeks ago. This is north of the airport. So the airport is on your southern edge of the map down here. So where you see the red line is where a levee will be getting constructed east of the interstate all the way over to University Drive. This project is a rather large project, so it's going to go through all next summer for construction, but it will be ready for whatever the spring of 2022's spring melt will bring to us. That's spring. So moving a little bit further south, here is the Riverwood neighborhood. This is one of those where we are planning for a 2021 construction next year. There was 6 full property acquisitions needed to be able to complete this project. We're down to only 1 remaining, where we're actively still discussing that acquisition with the property owner. And then we also have 4 levy easements that we are working to acquire as well. But we do believe this one will be constructed next summer. Moving down to the wastewater treatment plant area, the Royal Oaks Drive area is another one that we're looking at constructing next summer. Here we've completed 10 acquisitions over the past year or so, and we have 2 remaining. And again, we believe we will get those completed here still this year. That will allow us to be able to move forward with construction next year. Now we're in the Woodcrest area. So this is just north of the VA hospital area. This is one that we are actually looking at a 2022 construction. The full property acquisitions are completed though with this neighborhood, but we are still working with the property owners that are affected by the project by getting the necessary easements to allow for construction. Now we're down by the El Zago Golf Course area. So this is Elm Circle. This is another one that we are looking at 2021 for this year. All the full property acquisitions are complete, and similar to the other ones, we are still working on those easements, but we do not see any reason that would prevent us from being able to construct this next year. So now we're down in the Belmont area, which is down by the water treatment plant. So this one is actually broken up into 4 phases. Phase 1 is not shown on the map. It's behind the legend here in the bottom left corner, which was a lift station. That one was completed a couple of years ago. Phase 2 in the white box is one that we completed this past summer, so that is ready for next spring if so needed. Phase 3, we are still working on developing some alignments and going through some of options with the property owners there. We're hopeful in the next couple months that we'll be able to come back to you guys and have a further discussion on phase 3 and those 3 remaining acquisitions there. And then phase 4 is actually a new one that you guys have not seen before. This phase actually used to be part of phase 3, but the water treatment plant applied for a pre-disaster mitigation or a PDM grant from FEMA and was actually awarded a $4.5 million grant from FEMA for that project. So that is one that is going to be getting carried forward next year and tie into the flood wall that's on the north side of the water intake building down there and set us up for being able to continue on with phase 3 in the future. Then moving into the last neighborhood that give you an update on, the Harwood, Hackberry, and River Drive. Here, there are 3 acquisitions here circled in yellow, same as you guys saw a little over a year ago when we were presenting to you. We're still working with these property owners, still negotiating with them. But in the event that these negotiations are not successful, we just want to make you guys aware that we may need to move forward with the previously approved resolution necessity that City Commission approved back in 2017, if so needed, in order to complete the legal action necessary to make the acquisitions of those move forward. So that was just kind of FYI for you guys that we may need to take that next step. Due to that, the timeline for the construction is unknown at this time, though. In addition to all the levees and flood walls that I just mentioned here that we're still working on, we still have 19 storm sewer lift station improvements that were identified through the Plan B development with the Diversion Authority. Of those 19, one of them, the one actually down at Main Avenue and 2nd Street, was completed this past summer. We have 2 other ones that are starred in yellow that are construction's ongoing today, and then we're also designing one currently as well today, shooting for construction here soon. Once we get through the 2021 construction season, which as you guys just saw with all those other slides, it's heavy on levee and flood wall construction. We're gonna plan on hopefully accomplishing or reconstructing 3 of these storm sewer lift stations every single year starting in 2022 until we're done through all 19 of them. So that brings us to, well, first I should ask if there's any questions on the in-town
Nathan, just for the public, how many pumps do we have in the city of Fargo?
We have 75 of these storm sewer lift stations in town, which anytime the river is high or one of the legal drains is high through the city, we have to close the gates there and pump any runoff, rainfall, or snow melt into the river during that period. So they are a critical component of our flood fighting efforts.
Because we're so flat.
Correct. Yep. We will not gravity flow to the river in those conditions.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Pepcorn.
Nathan, can I ask you to go back a couple slides? First one, with those stations, the lift stations, do you have a priority like the ones that are the highest risk or the hardest to maintain? Are you doing those first, or how do you determine which ones you do first?
Yes. So the ones that we are tackling right now were part of a levee project. So it only makes sense to do those at the same time we're doing the levee project. But once we're transitioning away from those, yes, we do have a list that either, they're really at their end of their design life, risk failing, or they're at, very difficult areas to flood fight around them as well. So we work with Public Works and identify our priorities.
Thank you very much. And then the last question, I have just one more. There's only 9 properties left, and what I'd like to do is have you give us the list of the commissioners and the mayor, especially if it's somebody that you know, but I think I'd like to have us contact them individually and say, especially like when you look at the ones on, I think it's Briarwood, where they're jeopardizing, those 3 houses are putting a lot of other houses at risk. And so it might be that one of us on the commission might know somebody or something like that to urge them, because I think the last option should be eminent domain or something like that. And if there's a way that we can encourage them in saying how important this is, because we want to get this done, especially when there's only 9 left. So if you could do something like that, I would appreciate it.
Yep, we can sure do that.
Mr. Preston.
Just if you could review again the funding cycle, the funding process with these, they're all coming out of the sales tax for flood control, diversion, right?
Yes, correct. So the Diversion Authority has an overall financial plan for the entire project, including the diversion channel itself, as well as the in-town projects. So all of the works that are being constructed in town are part of that overall financial plan, which includes the sales tax dollars that you referenced, as well as grant funding from the state of North Dakota as well.
Any other questions? Go ahead then, Nate.
All right, so jumping into the Oak Grove neighborhood, everybody is well aware where the Oak Grove neighborhood sits, just here north of downtown. Here's a picture of what it looked like in 2009. Back in 2018, when Plan B was being developed by the Diversion Authority, we developed a conceptual plan within this neighborhood in order to eliminate the need to have to construct any emergency levees during a 37-foot flood, which is what will be passing through the city on the 100-year event with the diversion. At the time, though, when we were developing this plan, we had very limited information on the soils through here and whether or not a flood wall could be achieved around the Oak Grove campus and still meet all the certifiable standards that FEMA has in place. So at that point, we developed this concept, which was a very minimalistic approach and would have still resulted in the areas you see in the light blue still remaining within the 100-year floodplain post-diversion. Since then, though, we've been working with the Park District, Oak Grove Schools, as well as one of the remaining properties owners in the neighborhood here on some other alternatives that may be an option for us to be able to create that certifiable levee or flood wall around the campus and the entire neighborhood. Since then, we have gathered additional soils data down here and have determined that we can do what you're seeing on the map here, which is a flood wall and levee option. And to kind of dive into the details a little bit, I have Mike Love with Houston Engineering here to go through some of the specifics.
Thank you. So this project consists of a couple different components. First, we'll kind of start on the south end here. We have an earth levee that ties into an existing levee that's already been built by the city. The original concept plan had this house called out to be acquired and flood protection gone across it. Based on the more detailed and geotechnical information that we did, we were able to find an option to save that house. And so we were able to go around it. It does result in some additional tree impacts down the bank, but we're able to save the house. The levee will then continue east along the street until we get kind of toward the southeast corner of the school. At this point, we get too close to the river bank itself, or the edge of the water itself, and our riverbank stability, or the strength of the bank, goes down. At that point, we have to switch to a concrete flood wall. We'll have a removable closure at the entrance to the Oak Grove Park. That'll get us across the driveway there. We then switch back to an earth levee. This is on Park District property, so we plan to run an earth levee on Park District property up to kind of the northeast corner of the school, at which point we will switch back to concrete flood wall. There'll be another closure across the road there to allow traffic to still get down, or people to still get down to the football field for football games. It'll then run around the north end of the school. This is all concrete flood wall through here until we get to kind of this shaded area. At this point, the ground comes up, but it's not ground that's naturally above the 100-year floodplain, so it can't be relied upon for certified protection. So we have to do something to create freeboard there. The bank, unfortunately, isn't stable enough to build an earth levee there, so we're going to place a sheet pile wall, which is essentially about 4 feet tall. We'll drive it in the ground. That'll create the freeboard protection to hold the water back. It'll allow us to certify the project. So that'll run all the way up to and tie into the Mickelson project. So then there's some details of the components. And then the last thing, there's a cost slide here. So the original comp plan that was done as part of the diversion plan B, the 37-foot through town, that was estimated at $1.1 million. This revised plan, since it consists of so much more lineal feet of protection and has quite a bit of flood wall on it, is $9.1 million.
Mr. Gary.
What's the value of Oak Grove? What are we protecting for $9 million?
I do not know that off the top of my head.
Seems like an important question. We look at homes, and what should we do with the homes? Should we buy the home and build a cheaper wall, or should we build a concrete wall behind them, which is very expensive, as we know? And we do that analysis with almost every home that we buy, right? And with this, it just seems we're throwing out $9.1 million estimated.
The issue here was that in 2018, they were willing to have non-certified flood protection. And so that was not the concrete walls and all the other things that they've had. Their board came to us and said, we're going to continue to have our school here. We're not moving our school. What is it if you could do it? And the geotechnical came back that we could do it. Initially, we didn't think we could do anything there. So that's why the price changed. It's all that concrete wall that we have to put in.
I understand why it went up, but...
Yeah, but that's why the price changed.
Who's paying the additional cost? I assume we are, right? The diversion authority is?
Diversion authority.
So I'd like to know what the value of Oak Grove is before we start approving massive changes in the wall. Just because we do it with everybody else. So I don't know why they're special is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so one other step that we have done over the past year is that we have gone to the Diversion Authority's Finance Committee as well as their full board and received the budget adjustment within the overall financial plan for this additional project cost. So there has been that step already taken, that it is still part of the overall Diversion Authority's financial plan, that there was other project savings that allowed for this project to be able to be moved forward.
So in contingency funding, you had some contingency funding in your flood project, but you also had some savings. So then we went through finance, then we went through the board. We showed where we find the money to pay for this, Tony. Any other questions? Mr. Strand.
Thank you, Mayor. At what point will we hear an update on the John Stern home?
Yes, that goes back to the Belmont neighborhood. I can go back.
It sounds like we're already someplace, aren't we?
Well, we've been having a lot of conversations with the Stearns here over the past year, developing different options behind, in front, all sorts of options on their property. We're just not at a point yet today that we're, here to discuss all those options with you. Hopefully in the next couple months, we'll be at that point and we'll want to have a more detailed conversation at that point.
So if I hear you correctly, that's still being worked on?
Correct.
and
We're
it's
still
not finalized,
Yep,
and there's still hope to save it if possible?
Yep, we're looking at all available options out there.
That's the important information. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
For a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Pepcorn?
Aye.
Preston?
Aye.
Gehrig?
No.
Strand?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye. We now could either take a 5-minute break for public discussion, or I could run public discussion up to 8. What would the commissioners like?
Keep going.
Keep going? Yeah. Okay. Well, you got the rules there. First of all, I know that Mr. Chris Larson has been on the phone this whole meeting waiting to talk. So we are going to allow him to be first. He's in a care facility where he can't come to the meeting. So Chris, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Well, Chris, you were going to start. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. You get to say what you like, okay?
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing me to speak tonight in regards to the mask issue. As Mayor said, I'm Chris Larson, the Reuniting Residents and Families Task Force Chairman, which is a task force under the North Dakota Long-Term Care Association. And I'm here tonight, first of all, just to say thank you to Commissioner Strand for his hard work in bringing masks forward for a discussion from day one. Also want to thank the Commission and Mayor Mahoney for taking the time today to talk about the issue. And while I may agree with the need for a mask mandate, I do understand and I do respect the views of all citizens and respect the personal choices of those who make their homes in Fargo. As a resident in a long-term care facility, as the mayor said, and one that has talked to many different families impacted by this virus, I realize how important doing something is. That's why we did form our task force to take a step in reuniting residents and families through visitation. But as you know, communities continue to see increases in COVID. In turn, nursing homes do. That's why I'm here today. Citizens of Fargo and everybody, we need your help. We need the help of not just the commission, but the community as a whole. And the North Dakota Long-Term Care Association, they've voiced their support for a mask mandate to help slow the spread. But I think it's been underscored tonight that equally as important are washing hands, maintaining social distancing, and staying home when you're sick. So to continue to allow our residents and families the opportunity to have that visitation, I'm asking you and I'm pleading with the citizens, continue to do your part. Just remember, we're all in this together, and we're going to get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Bridget Ertel?
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Just to clarify, so the vote was on the ordinances, and it was rejected to have them received and filed, but they can be put on the agenda for October 19th, and most likely will.
I don't think so. Once it fails, it has to be someone who.
Commissioner Strand?
Parliamentary procedure-wise, somebody can move to rescind a previous decision that's already been acted upon. And in this current moment meeting, somebody could have moved to reconsider. But as I understand parliamentary procedure, it's been defeated.
Okay, that's all the clarification I need. I just wanted to clarify. So I just want to speak to you guys tonight. You guys have all heard from me from emails and all that, so I'll try to keep it brief. I just want to say I am against any receiving and filing of either mandate. That stance continues. I don't want an ordinance of any kind that would force citizens to wear masks. You mentioned looking to our neighbors. I encourage you to look to South Dakota, please. Look to Montana and Minnesota. Minnesota and Montana have mandates in place, and that isn't stopping COVID. Numbers continue to rise. I would caution all of you just to try to stop defeating a virus. You're not going to win against the virus. It's an undying boogeyman, and we need to stop using fear to promote force. Okay? The population will reach herd immunity if you give it a chance. No more threats of penalty and excessive mandate durations. This is a real virus. I don't think anybody's disputing that, but it does have a 94% over the age of 70 recovery rate and an over 99% recovery rate for other age groups. This ordinance is not for all of us. Mask wearing is not for all of us. You can't blanket decide what is best for everyone's health. And I'll just close with this. A free society does not need government to make our healthcare decisions for us. They stand for individual responsibility. Stop steering us towards socialism. And I know I'm not afraid to call it what it is. Our country wasn't founded on the principles of the greater good. It was founded on individual responsibility. And that is the good to everyone. So please reject the idea of force, less government, more responsibility. Thank you.
Glenn Knutson.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I just want to encourage you to realistically be honest with science and be honest with reporting. I know that Desi Fleming at the last meeting I was at had talked about the fact that the virus is going up tremendously. The largest age group that it was going up in was 15 to 24. At that time, every college in town, which are there 3 major universities and another minor university and 2 technical colleges, majority of those students live outside the Fargo, Moorhead, and Cass County area. Yet that was factored in to our procedures. Also, Sanford Hospital is the only trauma hospital between Seattle, the level 1 trauma hospital between Seattle and Minneapolis. Any case from Western North Dakota, even Eastern Montana, South Dakota, Western Minnesota, and outstate North Dakota will be coming to Sanford. Sanford is not refusing anyone. She stated that there was 87 cases, up from 37. On a radio station where she was pressed where they were coming from, they were around outstate North Dakota and other states. They were not directly from our area. I would also like you to be honest with masks so that people know what they need to do if they prefer to wear a mask. I've got a study, which I'd be happy to show you. I don't agree with their conclusion, but in the study, they did studied under controlled conditions all forms of masks. They determined not wearing a mask was more effective than wearing a lot of cloth and paper masks. And the paper and cloth masks were made according to CDC requirements by the people doing the testing. They determined that large droplets were getting through the cloth and paper masks, and there was more droplets coming through when you were talking and the jaw was moving than through those masks than there was when you were just talking without a mask. The only masks that were preventing the droplets at a higher rate than not having a mask were the surgical masks and the N95. And I talked the last time I spoke about the N95 from 3M has a warning label on the side that says this will not prevent all bacteria and viruses. And so people need to understand this, and they need to wear the masks properly if they're wearing them, and be concerned about their own safety and understand the mask that they're putting on. Thank you so much.
Desiree Morton.
Mayor and Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. I wasn't really prepared all that well to come up, but I felt the need to give a quote that Benjamin Franklin once said, that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And I really believe that mandating or enforcing masks, people, we live in a free country. This is the United States of America. If we had been intended to have something covering our face and our mouth, we would have been born that way. We've had viruses throughout the years. Hundreds of years there have been viruses that have come and have gone. And we have never gotten to a point where we have shut down our economy, mandated that people can't go out, mandated that people should wear masks, and we have survived. It's like herd immunity, like she was talking about. It's going to happen. It happens with any type of flu or virus that has gone around throughout the years. I also want to say that we have a booming economy. We talked about that here tonight in Fargo, North Dakota. I think a lot of that is attributed to the fact that you have allowed freedom in North Dakota. And if you look to South Dakota and you look to Nebraska and you look at the numbers that are there, they are doing as well as any other or better than the states that have been shut down. Their economies stopped. People can't go to their families' funerals, for heaven's sake. I mean, it's ridiculous. We have shut up our elderly in homes. They can't visit with their families. It makes no sense. That is harder on us as a people. We are human. We need that physical contact. And we are putting our senior citizens in facilities and not allowing their families to visit them. That is wrong. And I think this needs to stop. And we need to open up our economies and we need to let people live their lives and be free. Thank you.
Is Wes still here? Wes Fellow?
One more time, Mayor Mahoney, it's Wes Philomay.
Hello, me. Thank you.
Today marks 129 days since the George Floyd March. Shortly after it would come out that former Deputy Chief Osmondson had been amongst the crowd funneling intel back to the police department. It took the work of activists to truly make the community aware of his nefarious actions as well as that of the police department. No action was taken to prevent this behavior. When I brought this information to Mayor Mahoney, I was asked if I wanted to go forward or backward. Chief Todd would instill a belief in the department that I was against them all, which was false. We were simply after the truth. Since that time, the police department has continued to engage in questionable behavior. Officer Bloom, who goes by Michael Bloomquist on Facebook, either advertently or inadvertently added me and then removed the request, letting me know that he was the police department was watching. I have video evidence showing a marked Fargo Police Department squad car slowly driving through my parking lot at 1 a.m. During the climate change march about a week ago, I noticed a Fargo police officer in an unmarked gray SUV with license plate number 224 BUK surveilling the march. I had no idea this was legal. I approached the vehicle and took a few pictures. The officer rolled his window down and stated, "Get out of the street, Wes." 3 days later, I would observe the same officer in the same vehicle drive past my residence. I've shared video evidence of this occurrence with Commissioner Preston. The same question posed of Osmondson is the same one I have for this officer. Is this behavior rogue or sanctioned by the police department? I cannot begin to explain how terrifying of an ordeal this has been. The same officer is here in this room. When the police department engaging in surveillance and intimidation tactics against me are responsible for investigating 2 active death threats against me, what am I supposed to do? I have harmed no one. I have damaged 0 property. I have simply engaged my community in a call for change. Let it be known that should any individual attempt to unlawfully enter my home, I would be within my right to defend myself and my property. Let the world know that before any no-knock warrants or any violent actions are taken against me, that I was a man of peace and discouraged violence. I am asking Chief Zabalski to make it a priority that this police department cease such activity immediately and work to rebuild the trust with the BIPOC community. I am asking you, Mayor Mahoney, once again to stop ignoring us. We are not going away. It is time for progress.
Gretchen Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor Mahoney, Commissioners. I didn't prepare any remarks for tonight because I wanted to hear what you all had to say, but I have a couple of remarks now. First of all, I want you all to remember that I am a free-born American citizen. I'm not somebody that's to be ruled. I'm not a subject. And I would hope that you would all keep that in mind when you're making these decisions that affect all of us that in a job that you are elected to do. Secondly, I'm going to specifically address what Commissioner Preston said. I think that you should give the citizens of Fargo and the surrounding areas just a little bit more credit. We know what to do to keep ourselves healthy and safe, whether it's wear a mask or not wear a mask. In North Dakota, the joke is we naturally socially distance. I think that when I sit here and I listen to people that get elected to office tell us how we should take care of our own health, I think that's pretty condescending. So I would hope in the future that you would consider us all highly educated and that we do know the dangers of COVID because it's been here since last winter. Thank you.
Clara Derby.
Good evening. My name is Clara Derby. Last Friday, September 25th, was the Global Day of Climate Action, and over 100 Fargo-Moorhead residents marched on Fargo City Hall and Moorhead City Hall to demand immediate action to address the climate crisis. We are fast approaching climate tipping points, and even us in the land-bound north will no longer be able to ignore the effects climate change will have on our everyday lives. From increased drought in the Midwest, which will lead to food and water shortages, to more extreme weather events, including harsher winters, Fargo is not immune to the climate crisis. In fact, Fargo is listed as one of the top 10 fastest warming cities in the country. In light of this existential threat, we demand the cities of Fargo and Moorhead to join over 1,700 cities worldwide in declaring a climate emergency. The first step in solving a problem is naming it, and we must speak truth to power. I was pleased to hear Fargo is reinstating its sustainability working group and look forward to learning and working with them to develop real climate solutions. As a city, we need to anticipate significant increases in environmental regulations and lower emission mandates. Recent events have illustrated how the city feels about mandates. So I highly recommend the city take the opportunity to begin formulating its own plans to transition to higher efficiency and lower emissions. I encourage the Commission to reach out to me or other climate educators to learn about the true scale of the problem and the solutions that are already available. The climate emergency is now, and it's time that we start acting like it. Thank you.
Michael Felber. Okay. Ashley Oss, AUS.
Greetings, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Ashley. I am a mother and home educator here in downtown Fargo. My pronouns are she, her. I usually prefer not to speak publicly. I like to mind my business and keep to myself. This isn't my first time showing up here alongside One Fargo and Black Lives Matter. I've been hesitant to come to the microphone thus far, as I felt it's far more appropriate for me to listen and to do what I can to amplify the words of Black, Indigenous people of color in our community. Today I would like to express that I'm disappointed that the words of Fargo's people of color have somehow not yet been enough to motivate you. Month after month in this room, I have watched you spring into action when other community and business members have brought various issues to your attention. Now it's time for you to do the same for Fargo's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It's a shame that I have to ask this, but please give the same credence to their words as you routinely give to others.
Loretta Smith.
Mayor Mahoney and commissioners, most of what I was concerned about has been addressed tonight. Commissioner Garrick and Commissioner Pepcorn also made points that I would like to make or wanted to make. I want to just remind us that the Declaration of Independence says we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. That means they're God-given. And among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That governments were instituted among men to secure our God-given rights. And that's the role that has been granted to you as our elected officials. Regarding the Mask Up North Dakota campaign, I'd like to make a public statement that I am for all of us, and what's being emphasized in that campaign happens to be degrading to individuals that cannot or will not wear a mask because of their God-given rights. I also want to say we do have an excellent economy here in Fargo, and it was already stated previously by another citizen, and I believe that's because we have not legislated the citizens of Fargo. I appreciate the recommendation that the commission made previously regarding the COVID-19 situation, and I think it should remain that way and stand as a recommendation. It preserves our rights as citizens to make individual decisions regarding our health priorities, and it does not say we do not care for the rest of the citizenship if we don't make decisions that are recommended by the commission. I appreciate the time and effort that you have put into this. I want to thank those commissioners that did reply to my emails. I recommend that, or I understand that you've been deluged with emails. It is a very difficult situation to be in, and I just want to thank you for the time tonight.
Carrie Ann Platt.
Hello, my name is Carrie Ann Platt. I'm a professor at North Dakota State University. I came today to talk a bit about the enforceability issue because it was a similar concern that we had at NDSU at the start of the semester. Instructors were very concerned about having to be the mask police, altercations in the classroom, the unrest that you were speaking of earlier. And I would point to NDSU and our local community as a good example to look to because it turned out that those concerns, we weren't having that happen in the classroom. What we saw was when the guidance became clear, when there was a directive to say on campus, in buildings, you need to wear a mask, there were folks who were putting masks on if they did not want to, if they viewed it as an infringement on liberty, if they had a medical condition that made it difficult to wear a mask. Accommodations were made, options were given so they could continue their educations. But what we saw with students was there were sort of a few groups. There were the students who were going to wear a mask regardless of what the rules were. There were students who were not going to wear a mask and were going to take other options. But there was a large group in the middle that were just looking for guidance. And the increase in mask wearing from those students, I think, has been reflected in our positivity rate on campus, which is routinely lower than the Cass County rates. I would echo the previous speaker in her gratitude for those who are receiving all of these emails that are responding. I hope that you continue to be open to public comment. I know it's a lot of information coming in at once, but as a citizen of Fargo, as someone who actually came here from Montana and appreciates the ethos of the Midwest in terms of looking out for other people, I appreciate every time you're willing to read one of those emails and to respond. So thank you for that.
Lori Prokop.
Good evening. I have done hundreds of hours of research on the situation we're currently facing. I'm not just Googling it. I'm not just reading the headlines and watching TV, but reading journals and learning about this. So I'm speaking from a position of knowledge and of truth. I agree with many of those that spoke earlier about the not being for the mask mandate. So I would just like to make some, because I have such limited time, to make my comments. The fear that there is a killer virus lurking among us and that the person next to me is a bioweapon sent to harm me, or that we are all contagious and we just need to stay 6 feet away from each other is just fear, and it's based on untruths. At this point, germ theory is a theory. It has not been proven. This virus, COVID-19, has never been purified, visualized, or isolated, and viruses do not cause disease. We are made up of viruses. We have trillions of viruses on us, bacteria on us. If you looked at yourself under a microscope, you'd be amazed. The PCR test is testing for an RNA sequence and not for the virus, and that's why there's 90% false positives. And so we are creating not a pandemic, but a case-demic. The accuracy is unknown, as no gold standard has been used and has not fulfilled Koch's postulates. And once there was a money incentive attached to this virus and to this diagnosis, all numbers should be questioned. The majority of men and women that are taking this test are asymptomatic. Breathing is not voluntary, it's involuntary, and it's fundamental, and it is necessary for life. By requiring that a man or woman block their right to breathe freely is a violation of their basic rights and natural law. That any supposed benefit must be balanced against harm. These facial diapers, as I would call it, because of the breeding ground of bacteria and fungi, and enhancing the disease transmission for the user. So you are not helping anybody else, you are harming yourself. If you are in a surgical suite, as Dr. Mahoney had mentioned, you are in a very sterile environment, and there are rules to it. It's not taking it off, putting it back on, taking it back off, not washing it, and that. The lack of oxygen may induce, well, I'm running out of time, but I just want to say that the mandate of the masks is not warranted. It's a violation of our rights, and that I would say instead of we should unmask this masquerade and the whole thing of masking up North Dakota. We should be talking to people about exercise, eating clean, taking vitamin D, taking zinc, taking care of themselves personally, I think would be a great thing to do, but not to force a mask mandate. Thank you.
Karen Bakke.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. My concerns are communication and self-protection. For those that are hard of hearing, we rely on lip reading to understand what you're saying. When you have your mask on, I don't have the ability to hear everything you're saying. When Commissioner Pepcorn asked the rhetorical question, we heard all this going on. I looked over, I had no idea who was saying what and what they were saying. No mask, I could identify which ones. Okay, the second is personal protection. As a former self-defense instructor, I know that your first and foremost line of defense is to perceive a threat in order to avoid a confrontation. I can't do that if I can't see what's going on here. If I am assaulted or whatever, that reduces my ability to, in the first place, defend myself because I can't see the threat. But second, to identify to the police who my perpetrator was. I recently had my concealed carry license renewed. I had a photo with a headband that covered 1.5 inches of the top of my hairline and forehead. The photos were rejected because it didn't give full identification. How much identification do you have with this? I had studio crawl this weekend. People were coming in that I have known for years. I did not know who they were. I didn't know their voice.